Chapter 543. Tell me, how many people are there in this inn? Lone Moon asked directly. No. No more. The waiter replied as he trembled. There are only 3 of us in this inn. I was forced by the 2 of them. Lone Moon naturally did not believe him. He was about to ask in detail when suddenly there was a scream. It sounded like a woman's voice. Lone Moon glanced at Chef. It's downstairs. He was about to go downstairs when he instructed, bring Shining along. With that said, he brought the waiter downstairs. He saw that the door to one of the guest rooms downstairs was wide open, and there was a girl sitting on the floor, looking in the direction of the room with a terrified expression. Seeing him coming over, she screamed again and crawled backward. Don't kill me. Lone Moon ignored her and went straight into the room to take a look. Only then did he realize that there was blood on the bed. There was an old man lying on the bed, already dead, his body covered with knife wounds. There was also an open package scattered on the floor. He instantly understood what the 2 people with knives were doing downstairs. He raised his hand and threw the waiter over. You did it. No, it's them. They killed her. I only knocked her out, it has nothing to do with me. The waiter hurriedly argued. Lone Moon could not be bothered to listen anymore. He directly knocked the waiter out, and then looked at the girl on the floor. She seemed to be scared out of her wits, looking at Lone Moon with even more wariness and fear. It was only when Chef walked in with Shining that she seemed to react. Perhaps because she was of the same sex, she crawled toward Shining, clutching tightly at the corner of her clothes. She still looked like she was in shock. Shining was stunned. What happened? I Ching asked. Someone was killed, Lone Moon replied. He glanced at the girl on the floor. She should know the people in this room. Let's go out first. I Ching nodded, obviously smelling the thick stench of blood in the room. He glanced at the girl who was still clutching Shining tightly and explained, We are also guests staying here, we will not harm you. The girl was stunned for a moment before regaining some of her senses. She followed them out with a look of horror on her face. The few of them sat down on the chairs in the courtyard. The woman clutched the teacup in front of her tightly. She had finally recovered, but her hands were still trembling. It seemed that she was quite frightened. After a while, she looked at the few of them gratefully. Thank you, everyone, for saving me. She had also realized that the other party was not a cup person. She had escaped death. Don't worry, it's nothing. Lone Moon frowned. Initially, he had found it interesting, but now that someone had died, his mood became heavy. Miss, you are also a customer of this inn. Yes. She nodded, took a sip of the tea, and then explained, I'm from the South City, and I came here with Grandma Wong from the same village to look for my family. It was only when she arrived that she found out that her family had already moved away. She wanted to stay here for a night before setting off for home. I didn't expect that in the middle of the night, Grandma Wong would. As she spoke, her tears fell. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He didn't expect that this inn specialized in scamming outsiders. Then the people who committed the crime. The girl suddenly thought of something, and her body trembled again. Don't worry. Lone Moon answered. They won't wake up until dawn. The waiter said that there were only 3 people in the inn. They shouldn't have accomplices. She heaved a sigh of relief. She turned to look in the direction of the room, and then immediately turned back in fear. With some hesitation, she said, This is a murder case. Benefactors, are you planning to report it to the authorities? Report to the authorities. Lone Moon paused, then remembered that such things happened in the mortal world. The police had to be called. You're right, we do have to report it to the authorities. But we're not familiar with this place, we don't know where to report it. Report to the city lord residence, of course. The girl looked at him with some surprise, as if surprised that he did not know such a simple thing. She stood up and pointed in the direction of the east. The city lord residence is in the east of the city. There's no curfew in the city now. We have to quickly inform them. Lone Moon thought about it, then stood up and said, I'll go alone. He turned back to Chef and said, look after Shining. Chef nodded. Only then did he turn and walk out. Instead, the girl was stunned. She looked back and forth between the three of them. Weren't they looking after those fainted criminals? Why were they looking after this girl? Once Father Nyo left, he did not return for 4 hours. As Shining waited, she became hungry. Chef was bored. He turned to the kitchen to make supper. At that moment, only Shining and the girl who survived were left in the courtyard. The courtyard became quiet. The only sounds in the courtyard were the sound of a certain person chewing on fruit and the occasional sound of cooking in the kitchen. Want some? Shining handed a fruit over. The girl was stunned. She hesitated for a moment before taking it. Thank you, Mississippi. Perhaps it was because she was frightened, but there was still a trace of fear in her eyes. She thought of something and asked tentatively, may I know how to address you, miss? Shining. So it's Miss Shin. My name is Fong Fong. May I know why Miss Shin and the other two came to Wuling City? I don't know. Ha! Fong Fong was stunned. What did he mean by don't know? She was stunned. She did not take it to heart. She casually said a few more words. Seeing that she was focused on chewing on her fruit, it was not good for her to ask more. The atmosphere became cold. She suddenly felt a little restless. After thinking for a moment, she said, the weather is cold tonight. How about I make a pot of tea for you? Sure. Shining nodded. She then stood up and walked to the front yard. At that moment, Shining was the only one left in the huge yard. Chef's supper was not ready yet. She was bored waiting. What's more, this city was built by the river and connected to the sea. The other side of the yard was a view of the river. From time to time, there would be a gust of wind from the river, carrying a faint sharp moan, as if someone was singing in a low voice. Shining was stunned. She subconsciously looked back and saw that a figure had appeared on a rock by the river. It was a man with long dark green hair. He looked very flirtatious. His upper body was bare, but his lower body had a huge fish tail. He was sitting on a rock by the river, singing in a low voice while smiling at her seductively. Shining only took a glance, then turned back and continued chewing on her fruit. That man was stunned for a moment, as if surprised by her reaction. Then he opened his mouth again and sang even louder than before. That fragmented voice was like a song that seduced one's soul, making one lose their mind. Shining was stunned. She turned back to look at him again, then continued chewing on her fruit. Chapter 544. The man was a little annoyed. He frowned and clenched his fists by his side. Seeming to have thought of something, he took out a luminous pearl out of nowhere and threw it at her. It rolled all the way to a certain someone's feet. Shining lowered her head to take a look. Not to mention picking it up, she ignored it and continued to focus on the fruit in her hand. The man had no choice but to take out a bigger one and throw it out. Shining still ignored it. The man seemed to want to drag it out with her. He continued to throw luminous pearls, and each one was bigger than the one before. At first, Shining would look down to take a look, but later on, she didn't even look. Until the man took out a fist-sized pearl and threw it over. The huge luminous pearl hit her hand with a plop. Xining didn't catch it and the fruit in her hand fell to the ground. Xinying's face darkened. She stared at the half of the fruit on the ground for a while and narrowed her eyes. Then, she stood up and picked up the biggest luminous pearl and turned around. The man was delighted. He immediately continued to sing to her, wanting to confuse her in one fell swoop. Just as he started to sing, he heard the other party suddenly say, "Only you know how to throw, right?" With that said, he threw the luminous pearl back. Before the man could react, he felt a gust of strong wind sweeping toward him. Something flew past his ear with a whoosh. With an aura that could break through everything, it flew toward the river surface behind him. The next moment, he heard a whoosh. The entire river surface was instantly split into two by something. Immediately after, a loud rumble came from the opposite mountain. In the middle of the entire mountain peak, a huge circular hole was suddenly blasted open. At a glance, one could even see the endless sea on the other side of the hole. The man, what just happened? Who was he? Where was he? This brat deserves a lesson. Before the man could react, an angry voice rang in his ear. The next moment, he felt a weight on his tail. His entire body slid down from the rock. Xining dragged him by his tail all the way back to the courtyard and threw him on the ground full of luminous pearls. "Miss Shen, what was that sound just now?" "Ah." Fong Fong came in with tea and saw the man with a human body and a fish tail on the ground. She was so shocked that she screamed, What is this?" "Master." Chef rushed over with a dish in one hand and a spatula in the other. He stared blankly at the person on the ground. "This is fish. It could also be a whistle spirit. It had been screaming for a long time just now. It was so noisy." "Oh, then." Chef finally put down the dish in his hand and took out a kitchen knife. "Do you want an extra dish?" "Fong Fong, the man, Xining, I'm back." Lone Moon happened to walk in. "I've already informed the City Lord Manor, they've sent people over." "Ah! Where did this merman come from?" Under the illumination of the night luminescent pearls, Lone Moon immediately saw the man in the middle, who looked a little dazed. "It came from the water." Xining pointed to the riverside. Lone Moon turned around. "Holy shit! What did you do this time? Why was there a big hole in the opposite mountain as soon as he came back?" Xining thought about the size of that pearl just now and replied, "Played tennis." "Tennis your ass. You can make a hole in the mountain if you play tennis." "Miss Xining, are you alright?" Fong Fong also walked over quickly and looked fearfully at the merman on the ground who seemed to have been scared silly. "Is this really a merman? Legend has it that mermen like to eat human flesh and often use songs to bewitch people. I didn't expect that, it's actually true." So this merman picked Xining. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. This merman's taste was quite special. He picked one that couldn't be messed with. He directly took 2 steps forward and picked up the merman on the ground. "Tell me, what do you want?" That merman was stunned for a moment and turned to look in Xinying's direction. His entire body began to tremble again. He opened and closed his mouth a few times but could only let out ear-piercing cries, his eyes filled with fear. "Can't speak." Lone Moon was stunned for a moment. Impossible, could it be that his sentience was not developed? Looking closely, this merman really seemed to be a low-level demon beast. But this place clearly didn't have spirit chi, why would there be creatures like mermen? Just as he was thinking, a series of orderly footsteps came from the street outside. More than 10 people who looked like officials walked over. "Who reported that there was a murder case here?" The person walking at the front asked loudly and stepped into the courtyard first. In the next moment, he was so frightened by the creature in Lone Moon's hand that his legs turned to jelly and he directly took a few steps back. What monster is this? Lone Moon didn't know how to answer for a moment. Instead Fong Fong, who was at the side, answered, replying to Sir Officer, this seems to be a merman. It came out of the water and wanted to eat humans. It just happened to be restrained by these few young masters. Merman. The fear in that official's eyes retreated a little. He looked down at the luminous pearls on the ground and his eyes instantly lit up. Is this the legendary merman whose tears turn into pearls? Fong Fong was stunned and could only answer, maybe, it is. I guess. The official's eyes lit up even more. He had long lost the fear from before. He stared closely at the creature in Lone Moon's hand. Can this thing still hurt people? Lone Moon frowned but still replied, mermen live on water, naturally they won't be aggressive once they're on land. Unless it was a high-level merman that could completely transform, it was obvious that this one wasn't. Good. That official said a few good words in a row, the excitement on his face seemed to be uncontrollable. Thinking of something, he then turned to look at Lone Moon and the others and said, this demon is too dangerous, leaving it here might cause unforeseen events, it's better that I help you bring it into the City Lord Manor to be locked up. With that said, without waiting for their reply, he hurriedly ordered the few people behind him, go, capture that demon. The people behind the official rushed forward. Was this the rhythm of snatching things? Lone Moon hesitated for a moment but did not stop them, allowing them to take the merman away. Sir, then the murder case here. Seeing that they were about to leave, Fong Fong came forward with some anxiety. Only then did that official remember his purpose of coming, and hurriedly said, the matter here, the person who reported the case just now has already explained very clearly, don't worry, those people who murder for money, the city lord will naturally deal with them. With that said, he asked for the location of the 3 people in the shop, and conveniently brought the 3 people who fainted away to be locked up as well. He didn't even confirm the whole story again, as if he couldn't wait to go back. It seemed like he was curious about that merman whose tears turned into pearls, and wanted to bring it back personally to verify. Even the officials of the city lord residence were so careless. It was no wonder that the shop owners here dared to run illegal businesses in the city. Lone Moon shook his head. But there was no need for them to interfere in mortal affairs. Besides, this was not their plane. Chapter 545. Fong Fong, on the other hand, looked at them with a confused expression. It's getting late. Lone Moon looked at the sky. Those officials were busy presenting treasures to the city lord. It seemed like he couldn't be bothered with them. The matter has been resolved. Let's rest first. With that said, he pulled Shining and Chef upstairs, taking away the dishes on the table. The girl couldn't say anything more. She turned and found an empty guest room to stay in. Did you hear? Last night, a huge hole suddenly appeared in a mountain. It's hundreds of feet wide. How can we not see such a huge hole? That thing appeared overnight. And it looks very flat. It doesn't seem man-made. Rumor has it that someone heard an immortal voice from the sky last night. That voice was dreamy and illusory, like an immortal song from the 9 heavens. In that case, could that huge hole be a miracle from the heavens? An auspicious sign. Definitely. Otherwise, who would have the ability to dig through the mountain and leave such a huge hole in one night? It can only be that an immortal descended last night. Then isn't this a blessed city? Early in the morning, the entire city was talking about the huge hole that suddenly appeared in the middle of the night on the other side of the river. And the more they talked about it, the more mysterious it became. Some even swore that they saw an immortal with their own eyes. In an instant, that huge hole became a miracle. Many people even wanted to cross the river to burn incense and worship it. Lone Moon, Shining, Iching, alright, to a certain extent, it really was done by an immortal. While he was reporting the case last night, Lone Moon actually investigated the city. But the result was the same as before. This was a mortal city. It was no different from other places. There were no other places that had anything to do with managers. So he decided to go out of the city to look around. If he still didn't find anything, he would return to the plane first. Anyway, they weren't particularly interested in this big Dao organization. But just as they were about to leave the city, they were stopped by someone. It was a familiar person. It was the official who brought people to investigate the case last night. But a merman was taken away. This time, he didn't look as arrogant as before. He smiled kindly. Everyone, the City Lord invites you. City Lord. Lone Moon faltered. It must be because of that mermaid. It seemed like this official had really offered that mermaid to the City Lord. After thinking for a moment, he didn't decline. He nodded and followed the official. After a while, they arrived at the largest building in the city, the City Lord's mansion. Last night, when a person came to report the case, he just explained the situation at the door and went back. At this moment, the three of them were invited into the mansion and brought to a reception hall. There was already a person sitting inside. Upon closer inspection, it was the girl who survived yesterday. She seemed to be called Fong Fong. Miss Shen, 2 young masters, why are you here too? Fong Fong also looked at the three of them in surprise. Miss Fong, why are you here? Lone Moon asked. This morning, they had parted ways and left that inn. Didn't she say she was going back to her hometown? It was the officer at the city gate who said that the City Lord had given the order to bring me here. Fong Fong replied. Lone Moon frowned. The City Lord's voice could be heard from outside the door. In the next moment, a middle-aged man walked in hurriedly. His eyes lit up when he saw them. He quickened his steps and walked over excitedly. You were the ones who found that mermaid. Lone Moon and Chef exchanged a look before stepping forward and answering. We were the ones who found it. Insolence. The moment he finished speaking, the person beside suddenly shouted. You actually don't bow when you see the City Lord. Don't mind this kind of empty courtesy. The City Lord waved his hand. He became even more excited. He sized up Lone Moon and turned to look at Yi Qing beside him. Satisfied, he said, I can tell that the two of you have extraordinary skills. It's no wonder that you could catch the mermaid who has always been cruel and seductive. Actually, it was Shining who caught it. Yet the City Lord was even more enthusiastic towards them. His eyes were filled with curiosity. I wonder if the few of you can tell me how you caught it. Lone Moon was stumped. He couldn't possibly say that Shining had smashed a hole in the mountain first and scared the mermaid silly before catching it. We've all learned some martial arts before. We met this mermaid by chance. That's why we caught it. Lone Moon could only make up a story. I see. The City Lord was obviously excited and did not suspect anything. It seems that Mr. is also an extraordinary person. You're too kind, City Lord. It's just a small trick. You don't have to be so humble, Mr. The City Lord became even more excited. To be able to catch such an extraordinary creature, how can you be an ordinary person? Don't worry, I'll remember your contributions. I'll definitely reward you handsomely. Thank you, City Lord. It would be a waste not to accept money that was delivered to his doorstep. He smiled even more happily. He looked at the two of them again. Something flashed across his eyes. I see that the few of you are foreigners. Since you have such skills, why don't you stay in my residence and seek a future? he suggested directly. After thinking for a while, he added, to be honest, I've always been very fond of such rare beasts. I've collected many in my residence. But this is the first time I've seen someone who could catch a mermaid in the sea. I really value talent. So he wanted to hire thugs. Lone Moon smiled. Thank you, City Lord, for your kind intentions. But the few of us have important matters to attend to. We're just passing by this city. It's really not good for us to stay. Oh. His expression darkened instantly. He seemed to be displeased with his rejection. You have to think carefully. If you stay in my residence, riches and glory will be at your fingertips. Isn't that better than you running around everywhere? Hope you understand, City Lord. Lone Moon still replied. We do have important matters to attend to. The City Lord's expression darkened even more. After a while, he continued smiling. Don't be in such a hurry to make a decision. I see that the few of you are also knowledgeable about alien races. Why don't you follow me to the rare beast garden to take a look at those alien races I've collected? Then you can make your decision. With that said, he turned and walked out without waiting for their reply. The guard beside him who was carrying a knife took 2 steps forward. He looked like he was waiting for the few of them to move. Lone Moon and I Ching exchanged a look. Something flashed in their eyes at the same time. They then followed, pulling Shining along. Fong Fong, on the other hand, had a look of panic on her face. She had no choice but to follow them. She walked carefully beside Shining. The rare beast garden that the City Lord mentioned was not far. The few of them followed him through a few courtyards. Finally, they turned into a courtyard with a completely different style. The courtyard was huge. But it was filled with rare treasures. The roadside was filled with all kinds of exotic flowers and plants. From time to time, they could see all kinds of odd-looking creatures passing through. There were deer with flowering branches on their heads. There were cats that could speak human language. Strange beasts with strange appearances. These were all things that could not be easily seen in the mortal realm. Chapter 546. Fong Fong was completely stunned. She looked at everything in front of her in disbelief. Even Lone Moon and I Ching's eyes flashed with surprise. There were actually all demon beasts and spirit herbs here. In this world without spirit chi, where did they come from? How is it? How's my rare beast garden? The City Lord said with some intention of showing off. It really leaves a deep impression. Lone Moon replied politely. These are just some small things. He continued, follow me inside. With that said, he continued to walk forward. The deeper they went, the more things they saw around them. Lone Moon looked carefully. Even the surrounding spirit herbs, from the original 1st and 2nd level, there were already 4th and 5th level ones appearing at the back. They could be considered as mid-level spirit herbs, but he still couldn't sense any bright aura of spirit chi. Lone Moon suppressed the surprise in his heart, followed the City Lord all the way into a cave. There were no more spirit herbs in the surroundings. The cave was no longer dark. The stone walls at the side were covered with small colorless flowers. The flowers were transparent, but emitted a faint white light. Fong Fong seemed to have never seen such a strange flower. She subconsciously reached out and touched the left side. In the next moment, a terrifying beast roar came from the stone wall. Something rushed out from the stone wall, opened its mouth and bit towards her. Fortunately, Shining, who was next to her, reached out and pulled her. Thus she managed to avoid it. Fong Fong was startled. Her face instantly turned as pale as snow. She panted heavily. Half of her body fell limply onto Shining, looking like she was quite frightened. Ha ha ha, I forgot to remind everyone. There is a stone beast living in this stone wall. It has a bad temper. This flower is his favorite. You can't touch it. The City Lord reminded without much sincerity, then continued to walk forward. Fong Fong's face was so scared that there was no trace of blood on her face. Shining held her up, then stood up with a face still full of shock. After a while she said softly, "Thank you." Shining turned back to look at her in surprise, crunched a bite of the fruit, then nodded and responded, The group headed straight into the cave. After a while, the surroundings suddenly heated up. The city lord stopped in front of a huge metal door and introduced with even more excitement. "This is the most unique beast in my precious beasts garden. Even I, the city lord, don't know what it is. It took a lot of effort to catch him." After saying that, he activated the mechanism at the side. Immediately, a wave of hot air rushed over. There was another iron fence inside, and through the gap in the middle, they could see raging flames everywhere. And in the middle of the raging flames, there was a giant beast that was as tall as 3 people lying inside. This was a 7th-grade flame beast. Lone Moon hurriedly turned to look at I Ching. Seeing him nod, he hid the shock in his eyes. There was a 7th-ranked demonic beast but no spiritual chi. Interesting. How is it? The city lord looked at them again and said, "I was even able to capture such a monster, which shows the power of my city. Have you changed your mind and decided to stay and work for me? The city lord is naturally powerful and rich enough to rival a country." Lone Moon smiled and said, "But we really don't want to stay here. It's not convenient for us to stay in the city for long. We can only let down your good intentions." The city lord's expression darkened even more. A guard at the side spoke up directly. "You actually don't know how to appreciate favors. It's really too..." Before he could finish, the city lord raised his hand to stop him. His eyes darkened as he smiled and said, "All right, since you don't want to stay, then I won't force you. You can leave." "Thank you, city lord." Lone Moon gave Chef a look and turned to walk out. But the city lord and that guard behind did not follow, as if they really intended to watch them leave. But they had only taken a few steps when they suddenly heard a cracking sound. Their feet suddenly sank and the originally flat road disappeared directly. The 4 of them fell down together. They could still faintly hear the curses of a certain city lord from above. "Unappreciative things, serves you right to become food in the mouth of a monster." Among the 4, the most panicked one was not Fong Fong. She screamed directly. Lone Moon and I Ching were long prepared. Chef directly turned and hugged Shining, who was beside him. Lone Moon also grabbed Fong Fong, who had a look of horror on her face. They landed on the ground in a few leaps. The sound of water splashing could be heard beside their ears. Lone Moon directly took out a pearl and shook it. Their surroundings lit up instantly. Only then did they see clearly that they were standing on a protruding rock. Below them was an underground river a few meters wide. In the river, hideous-looking strange fish jumped out of the water from time to time, revealing their mouths full of sharp teeth. Fong Fong's expression was even uglier. She instantly broke free from Lone Moon's hand and hid behind Shining as if she was used to it. "What? What is this place?" The few of them did not answer. Instead, I Ching looked at her, tightly holding onto his master's hand. He frowned and pointed to the right after a while. "Father Nyo, over there." "WH. What over there?" Fong Fong's face was still full of horror and confusion. "Why did the city lord suddenly lock us up here? He didn't want us to live in the first place." Lone Moon explained casually. "He probably didn't want outsiders to know about the mere people he obtained. So those of us who know, either become his people or become dead people who can't speak." Fong Fong's eyes widened abruptly. Her face was full of disbelief. She didn't seem to think that the dignified city lord would do such a despicable thing. Lone Moon had long guessed that the city lord was not a good person. Otherwise, why would that shop owner open a shady shop in the city so brazenly? The reason why they came over here was because he had looked around the entire city yesterday. Only the city lord's abode had not been searched. So he just went with the flow and came to take a look. But he didn't expect that there would really be a discovery. A place without spirit chi would actually grow spirit herbs and high-level demon beasts. This was really too strange. In addition, when they saw that 7th-level demon beast just now, he and Chef felt a trace of spirit chi at the same time. Originally, it was not impossible to take advantage of the situation and pretend to agree to the city lord's enlistment. But it was too troublesome. Not only was it a waste of time, they also couldn't investigate openly. They might as well just fall out with him. But they didn't expect that this trace of spirit chi would coincidentally appear in this underground river. It was a pleasant surprise. It was a pity that the spirit chi was too weak. In addition, this place was strange. Their spells couldn't be used. Naturally, they didn't have to use their divine perception to investigate. It was very troublesome. But as long as they could find the source of that trace of spirit chi, they would probably be able to find out what exactly was going on in this place. However, this woman called Fong Fong was going to suffer an unexpected calamity. "Master, let's go," I Ching said and directly carried Shining. With a few leaps, he used the protruding rocks on both sides of the underground river to move forward along the direction of that underground river. Chapter 547. Miss Fong, sorry for the offense. Lone Moon also glanced at Fong Fong, and brought her along to follow, but he was carrying her. The two of them were very fast, but they still followed the flow of that underground river for an hour, and still did not see the end of this underground river. By right, even if it was an underground river, it should flow into a river or into the sea. They must have long left the perimeter of that city, but still did not find the end. Chef, who was leading the way, suddenly paused, and turned to look at the stone wall on the right. "What's wrong?" Lone Moon also stopped. I Ching turned back to look at him. "The direction has changed." Lone Moon was stunned, and felt carefully. Indeed, the spirit chi that had been following the river just now, suddenly made a sharp turn and entered the stone wall at the side, and seemed to be even thicker. I Ching thought about it, then took a few steps back, and put down the person in his hand. "Master, wait here for a while, don't get too close." With that said, he stuffed a fruit into her hands. "Oh." Shining took it, and took 2 steps back. Lone Moon also hurriedly pulled Sister Fong Fong back. Only then did I Ching take out a long sword from his storage bag, and focused on the stone wall at the side, and slashed hard. Instantly, there was a loud crash, though he could not use sorcery, but Chef's swordsmanship still broke the entire stone wall in an instant. Large pieces of rubble tumbled down with a rumble, revealing a passage that was forcefully slashed by the sword chi. "Let's go, master." I Ching kept his sword, and then turned around. Shining followed. Wait for me." Fong Fong hurriedly took 2 steps forward, still following behind Shining with some shock. Lone Moon could only walk at the back. The passage that Chef temporarily split open was not very wide. At first it could only allow one person to pass through, but for some reason, the further in they walked, the wider it became. Only the surroundings became even darker. Even the illumination bead in Lone Moon's hand seemed unable to illuminate the surroundings completely. Fong Fong's expression became more and more flustered, and she followed even faster, and even subconsciously pulled Shin Ying's hand. What exactly is this place?" "I don't know," Shining replied as she continued to chew on her fruit. There was no hint of panic on her face. It was as if she was not in an unknown and dangerous place, but had come specially to explore. Fong Fong took a look at her, and for some reason, she wasn't that afraid anymore. Miss Shen is really brave, even I'm not this nervous. She revealed a kind smile and suddenly seemed to have thought of something. Oh yes, I also bought a few pears on the street this morning. Since Miss Shen likes fruits so much, would you like to try some? After saying that, she directly took out a pear from her bag. Shining didn't look at the pear. Instead, she turned her head and looked straight at her. She didn't respond for a long time. When the other party thought that she was going to reject him, she suddenly smiled and nodded. All right. Thank you. After saying that, he took it. You're welcome. Fong Fong smiled back at her and turned to look ahead. Suddenly, her expression changed as she said, Hey, is there light in front? Is it the exit? With that said, she pulled Shining with a look of pleasant surprise and took 2 quick steps forward. Indeed, not far away, there was suddenly a white light, and it was getting brighter and brighter. At the same time, a thick wave of spirit chi rushed towards them. I Ching and Gu exchanged a look behind them and quickened their steps. Great, we can finally go out. Fong Fong was even more delighted. Her face was full of excitement. The white light in front of them was increasing, but it didn't look like sunlight at all. Instead, it looked like a large patch of moving light spots. This is... She stopped in her tracks and looked in front of her in shock. All she saw was a large patch of thick white in front of her. She couldn't tell what it was, as if countless light spots had gathered together and covered the ground. It was flowing slowly, as if it was a white spring. In a blink of an eye, everything around them disappeared. It was as if they were transported to another time and space. Everything around them was dark, leaving only that patch of white in front of them. What? What is this? Fong Fong's face was full of shock. Lone Moon took a step forward and suddenly turned his head and smiled. What is this? Shouldn't you tell us? Young master, what are you talking about? She turned back with a confused look. I don't understand what you mean. Lone Moon's eyes darkened. You spent so much effort to lure the 3 of us here. It can't be just for us to watch you act, right? She was stunned for a moment. In the next moment, her original innocent and confused expression changed instantly. Suddenly, her figure flashed and she directly retreated into that patch of white light, revealing a smug smile. I didn't think that I would still be seen through. When did you guys start suspecting me? When you appeared in the room downstairs. Lone Moon wasn't in a hurry as he explained slowly. Downstairs. She was stunned for a moment. Didn't that mean that she had exposed herself right from the start? How did you guys know that I was acting? Lone Moon rolled his eyes and gave her an expression that said, We live upstairs. If the old man downstairs was really killed by that innkeeper, it's impossible that we didn't hear anything. Moreover, there were no bloodstains on those 2 people's knives. Those 2 people with knives heard the waiter's voice and ran up hurriedly. If they really killed someone first, how would they have the time to clean their knives before coming up? I see. She looked stunned. I didn't think that I would be exposed so early. Since you guys already knew that there was something wrong with me, why did you bring me all the way here? Since we're already here, we naturally want to find out. Lone Moon said. What exactly do you want to do by luring us here? What do I want to do? She suddenly laughed out loud. Her eyes darkened and instantly filled with malice. She gritted her teeth and said, Of course I want to turn you bunch of scum into ashes. Lone Moon was stunned. He kept feeling that her hatred came out of nowhere. We don't even know you. Why did you do this? Why? Ha ha ha. She laughed even louder. Her eyes turned cold and the hatred that was like the sea suddenly poured out. You invaded my world for no reason and you're asking me why. Invaded? Lone Moon was stunned. His eyes widened in disbelief. You're a manager. How was that possible? Such a small world, was it really a plane? Are you very surprised? As if guessing what he was thinking, she laughed even colder. Such a small plane also has a manager. It's a pity that you guys don't have the chance to leave this plane alive. The same goes for your manager. As she spoke, she suddenly raised her hand. The pair in Shenying's hand suddenly turned into several rays of white light, forming 4 walls of light that directly locked her inside. Chapter 548. Master. I Ching was shocked. Just as he was about to save her, the light wall suddenly flashed with white light and disappeared in an instant. Instead, it appeared behind Fong Fong. This is a restriction I created using the power of the original source. No one can escape. Your target from the start was Shenying. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He suddenly thought of that mermaid. It was a creature that lived in the sea, yet it appeared by the river. Moreover, it wasn't just the mermaid, the city lord, and even the black shop. They were all used by her to test them. That's right. Who asked her to be your manager? I originally wanted to get rid of her directly. Fong Fong said indifferently. Unfortunately, I underestimated her strength. Even if I retracted the immortal spirit chi of this plane, she still has such terrifying strength. I could only lure you here and use the power of the original source to suppress your abilities. Lone Moon was stunned. He subconsciously sensed his own plane. Indeed, he could not sense it at all. And the plane door was locked. No wonder she brought them here. So she wanted them to have no way out. Are you done with your nonsense? I Ching's expression darkened. He took a step forward and pulled out his sword. Do it. Fong Fong laughed coldly. She did not take them seriously at all. She turned and glanced at Shenying, who was trapped in the white light. The manager is already in my hands. This is the land of the original source. With your strength, you can't. Before she finished speaking, a terrifying sword chi suddenly slashed towards her. It carried an aura that could sweep away everything, and a thick murderous aura. She subconsciously dodged to the side to avoid the sword aura. Her heart turned cold. If she had not dodged fast enough, the sword chi would have already hit her. How was this possible? He turned to look at I Ching in disbelief. Only to see a stormy expression. He said word by word, "Don't take out your dirty thing. Give it to my master." Lone Moon, #on a chef self-cultivation #. So the main point of your anger was only because the other party gave Shenying a pair. Should he be glad that he held it in for so long and cooperated with him to finish the act before he flew into a rage? Chef, on the other hand, had already rushed out with his sword in hand. Instantly, the surrounding sword chi became even thicker, bringing with it a sense of killing. Fong Fong was forced to retreat all the way, getting closer to the place where the origin energy was even denser, but she discovered that it was completely useless. I Ching's movements did not slow down. Instead, he sped up. This, how could this be? Her face was filled with disbelief. She had clearly entered the source and controlled the manager. How could they still have this kind of ability, unless you are managers too? Her eyes widened. What? Did you only recognize me now? Lone Moon replied with a smile. How could there be 3 of them at once? She gritted her teeth as the hatred in her eyes deepened. Out of the 3 of them, the one called Shenying was clearly the strongest. She was even somewhat unfathomable. That was why she instinctively thought that she was the manager and these 2 were merely her assistants. She could tell that there was a contract between the 3 of them, but she did not expect that all 3 of them were managers. As the manager of a dimension, they were actually willing to become someone else's assistant. Was there something wrong with their brains? But she did not have time to think about it. I Ching's sword move had already forced her into a corner. She gritted her teeth and her expression darkened. She did not know what she had done. The plane's original source, which was originally as calm as spring water, suddenly began to boil. Following that, there was a series of angry roars. One by one, giant beasts emerged from the water and attacked I Ching. Holy shit! This manager actually raised demon beasts in the source. Lone Moon was shocked. He cursed under his breath. Then, he pulled out his sword and rushed out. The demon beasts raised in the power of the original source were naturally not simple. They were no longer demon beasts but divine beasts. Yet, they could not use any sorcery here. They could only rely on their swords to resist. It was even more difficult to deal with them. Not to mention that a group of them came at once. Lone Moon rushed in. Together with Chef, they each took one side and began to fight. For a moment, the white light was filled with sword chi. Fortunately, although these divine beasts were strong, they did not seem to have any sentience. Even if they could not use sorcery, and the manager's abilities were suppressed in many ways, it was only a matter of time before they could defeat these giant beasts. They were just trapped inside for a while and could not get out. And Fong Fong, who had been chased and beaten by Chef, also got an instant chance to catch her breath. She retreated directly. Her injuries were not light. Her body was full of cuts from the sword chi. The cuts were so deep that her bones could be seen. But for some reason, the wounds were not healing. She was not suppressed. To a manager, these were obviously just insignificant small injuries. You are using your own power to raise them. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded beside her ear. Fong Fong was stunned. She turned around and realized that the one who spoke was Shining, who was trapped in the white light. She was still holding a fruit in her hand and gnawing on it. She did not panic at all. Instead, she tilted her head and looked at her curiously. That's not right. She suddenly changed her words. I should say, you are using your own power to nourish this broken plane. So she could not even heal herself. Her eyes widened suddenly. She looked like she had been poked. Her eyes were full of wariness. Why? Shining continued. She would not be able to hold on much longer if this went on. Why? She stood up as if her embarrassment had turned into anger. The hatred in her eyes was about to overflow. She gritted her teeth and roared. I want my plane to not collapse. I want the living beings in my world to live. I want them to be swallowed by chaos. You murderers of the Big Tao organization, what right do you have to ask me why? Big Tao organization. Shining frowned. We are not. Is there a difference? She laughed coldly. You will be soon. Otherwise, why would you appear here? As long as you kill me and destroy this plane that is already in a terrible state and struggling at death's door, you will get the right to join the organization. Right? Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. You mean, we were sent here actually as a test to join the organization? Why? You don't even know this. The coldness in her eyes intensified. She said mockingly, then the Big Tao organization is really blind this time. They actually invited a few people who don't understand the situation. Shen Ying's eyes darkened. She finally put down the fruit in her hand and reached out to break it forcefully. There was only a tearing sound. The layer of white light that trapped them instantly split open like a piece of white paper. Fong Fong's eyes bulged instantly. Shining walked directly towards her. She stopped a step away from her and said in a low voice, come, let's have a chat. Chapter 549. You. How did you? She still looked like she had not reacted, staring blankly at the person in front of her. She had clearly trapped her. Why was it so easy? Shining had already pressed her to sit on the ground with a slap. She also sat cross-legged at the side, and even took out a few plates of pastries, looking like she was planning to have a long talk. After a moment, as if recalling something, she suddenly raised her head and shouted at the two who were fighting fiercely, "Chef, Father no, stop fighting. Come over and have a good talk." With that said, she directly reached out towards the original source of white light below her, and slapped hard, only to hear a sound, faint energy, instantly spread out, sweeping towards the whole white light. And those giant beasts that were fighting with the two, like broken glass, turned into thousands of white light spots, and returned to the original source. And Fong Fong, who was forced to sit down, also felt some familiar power instantly return to her body. In the next moment, those terrifying sword wounds on her body directly healed. Lone Moon and I Ching, who had lost their opponent, exchanged a look, then kept their swords and walked back, directly sitting opposite the two. Lone Moon even glared at Shining. If she wanted to attack earlier, she made them fight for so long. Shining propped up her head with one hand, then looked at Fong Fong again. "All right, come, tell your story." Fong Fong, Lone Moon, Ching. Fong Fong was stunned, and only reacted after a while. She still looked at the three with a face full of hatred, but did not attack again. Shen Ying's seemingly casual palm just now was really too shocking. She also understood, with her strength, there was no way to fight against them. She just did not attack previously. No, even if she did not attack, she probably could not defeat the other two managers. Oh right. Shining glanced at her, thought of something, and turned to look at I Ching, saying, "Chef, use that washing machine spell on her." Lone Moon's mouth twitched, and he casually interrupted, "That's called the dirt removal spell." "To hell with your washing machine." "Oh, it's the dirt removal spell." Shining nodded, "Otherwise she'll be covered in blood. It'll look like she's telling a ghost story." "Yes, master." "What is it?" "Spells can't be used here." "It would be F***CK." Before he finished speaking, he saw Chef cast a spell, and the blood on the other party's body disappeared completely. Apart from a few holes, the other party's clothes were as clean as new. How can he suddenly? Wait, he subconsciously sensed and found that the god power in his body had returned, not to mention the immortal chi and spirit chi that could be easily converted. What was going on? Oh. I just opened a back door. They were from the plane. Lone Moon, he vaguely felt that something in his mind had snapped. If you can open the back door, you should have started the meeting earlier. They had worked so hard for a long time. You didn't ask me to open it. Shining said innocently. Zhang Xian spat a mouthful of blood. The spectating Fong Fong, were these three really managers? Why does it seem so unreliable? For some reason, he wanted to ask, was their plane still alive? The story of Fong Fong Dimensions Evergreen was, in general, a story of a successful invasion. Only that it wasn't one invader who invaded this plane, but more than 10 managers attacked at the same time. In the end, it led to the collapse of her plane, leaving behind only a place the size of this small world. And that big Tao organization was indeed like what Shining said, an alliance formed by the managers of various planes. According to Fong Fong, there were already more than 10 managers now. And most of them came from immortal spirit planes similar to I Ching and Lone Moon's. But they were fundamentally different from the administrative committee that Shining once came into contact with. The administrative committee was established to resolve internal exchanges, while they were formed to form alliances with outsiders. Though they wouldn't initiate a war, but if they encountered an invasion, they would swarm forward and counter-invade the other party's plane. Though they said it was for self-protection, their methods were merciless and ruthless, not listening to any explanation. They had also been taking in new members. Fong Fong was one of the invited members at that time, but she saw through their autocratic nature, so she rejected them directly. But even so, she suffered the revenge of the Big Tao organization. Those people saw that she was a threat and directly launched an attack. Fong Fong only managed to preserve the last bit of plane's original source after using all her methods. She originally thought that she could start anew, but she was still discovered by those people. They trapped me in this small world and locked the last bit of original source, making me unable to escape or save my own plane. Fong Fong's eyes were empty, as if she had lost all signs of life. She was filled with despair. I can only watch as my plane moves towards death. What's funny is that they still use my dilapidated land as a trial ground for them to select their allies. They can be considered to have made full use of it. She suddenly looked up and gave a sarcastic smile. You are the targets of their selection this time. Shining fell silent. Lone Moon and I Ching's expressions didn't look good either. They didn't expect that the Big Tao organization would actually be a group of people like this. After a while, Lone Moon spoke. What are their criteria for selection? Her smile grew colder. She took a deep breath and said, to discover the truth of this world, to find the correct path to the Big Tao organization. That's simple. Simple. Fong Fong turned to look at him. That deep-rooted hatred just now began to surface again. It's naturally simple to you, but to me, it's a disaster time and time again. What do you mean? Lone Moon frowned. Do you think that you're the first batch of selected managers I've seen? She laughed coldly. Not many of them are like you, completely unaware of what the Big Tao organization is. Most of them have long heard of the existence of the Big Tao organization and can't wait to join. Of course, they also know that there will be such a test, but when they can't find the path at all, what do you think they will do? Lone Moon was stunned, his expression darkening. Yet Fong Fong continued to laugh coldly. The best way they can think of is of course to find me and ask for the correct path. But they can't find me easily, so they can only force me out. Some will still be fine, they will first threaten me, some will just directly massacre the city to force me to commit. The people in this city are already the last living beings in my plane, they aren't afraid that I won't obey, and it works every time. So, instead of waiting for death, why not strike first and gain the upper hand? She swept a glance at the few of them. Even if I'm going to die, why don't I give those bastards from the Big Tao organization some trouble? Chapter 550. Was this the reason why she targeted them from the start? For some reason, Lone Moon suddenly could not bring himself to blame her. After all, in her eyes, the fact that they could enter this place meant that they were already standing on the opposite side of her. Shining, who was at the side, suddenly asked, are the last living beings in the city? Why? Is this very hard to believe? Fong Fong turned back to look at her, the mockery in her eyes intensified. With a wave of her hand, the few of them only felt a blur in front of their eyes, and instantly, they were at another place. It was the city gate. On the streets beside, there were still people coming and going, but it seemed that they did not notice the sudden appearance of the few of them. Don't you want to hear a story? Then go out and verify it yourself. Fong Fong said with some self-abandonment. With that said, she did not wait for the few of them to reply, and directly left the city. The three of them exchanged a look and followed. This time, the guards at the city gate did not stop them, as if they could not see them, they went all the way out of the city. The moment they stepped out of the city, the scenery in front of them changed instantly. The original green mountains and clear waters outside the city were all gone, instead it turned into a void, as if a layer of camouflage had been removed. The inside and outside of the city seemed to be two completely different worlds, directly separated from a few meters away from the city gate. The city was still bustling with activity, but a few meters away from the city, it was a vast and boundless void. There was nothing inside, there was no sunlight on the ground, not even air, only endless darkness. How could this place? Lone Moon was stunned. He did not expect the situation outside the city to be like this. No wonder she wanted to stop them from leaving the city previously. Now that he thought about it carefully, although there were many people in front of the city gate previously, indeed no one really entered or left the city. However, whether it was when he saw that fruit previously, or what he could sense now, this small world was indeed very big. There should be a wider world outside. Why was there only one city left? After locking me in here, they also locked the void space in here. As if knowing their doubts, she answered directly, they had no intention of letting me go in the first place, so the void has been devouring this side of the world, until now there is only this city left. It won't be long before this last city disappears. By then, her plane would really disappear. The look in her eyes grew increasingly gloomy. As if she had figured something out, she sighed and said, "This void is the path to the Big Tao organization. I've lost this time, you guys can leave." Lone Moon and I Ching fell silent and frowned subconsciously. Actually, they didn't really want to join that Big Tao organization, especially after understanding these things. However, Shining, on the other hand, suddenly took 2 steps toward the void. She squatted down and stared at a spot. She turned and asked, "The girl who gave me the pear, is this the thing that's locking you up? Who's the girl who gave me pears? Also, what is it?" The 3 of them were taken aback at the same time. "That one." Shining pointed to the front. Seeing that the 3 of them were still confused, she quickly finished the fruit in her hand with a few crunches. Then, she smoothly threw the core of the fruit somewhere inside. That. Before the few of them could react, they heard a loud reverberation, like a heavenly bell, instantly spreading throughout the entire world. Following that, the ground beneath their feet shook. The entire city, no, the entire world seemed to tremble. What's going on? Lone Moon and I Ching were both taken aback. Fong Fong's eyes widened abruptly. With a look of disbelief, she said, "You can see it." "Ah." Shining calmly took out another fruit. Nodding, she said, "Isn't this very obvious? Such a huge chain chained her up. The 3 of them who didn't see anything, how is this possible?" Fong Fong's expression was even more shocked. She clearly searched for a very, very long time. When no manager entered, she spent all her time in the void, searching for the thing that locked her and her plane here. But she found nothing. Instantly, emotions welled up in her heart. There was excitement, agitation, hope, worry and a hint of despair. It was very complicated. She stared straight at Shining, wanting to open her mouth but not knowing what to say. Do you need me to pluck it out?" Shining suddenly asked. Her tone was relaxed and natural, as if she was asking if she needed to eat a fruit. Fong Fong's entire body shook. She looked at her in disbelief. A huge joy flashed across her eyes. A moment later, it sank again, becoming even more complicated. "You have to help me." "Why?" She clearly only wanted their lives from the start. "Huh?" Shining was taken aback. She seemed to have just thought of this question. She was stunned for a long while. Did she need a reason for this? She could only push Lone Moon beside her. "Father, no, give a reason." "How would I know?" Lone Moon glared at her. Then, he replied casually, "Just take it that we're nosy." Yet her expression became even more complicated. She clenched and unclenched her fists a few times. The remaining hatred in her eyes instantly disappeared completely. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, as if she had let go of something. After a while, she said, "Forget it. You don't have to do this. This has nothing to do with you in the first place. Why bring trouble upon yourselves?" She sighed. She turned to look at the void in front of her. It was as if she was looking at something through this darkness. "My plane is already hopeless. If you really sympathize with me, then after you join the Big Tao organization, don't let a situation like mine happen again." She lowered her head to look at Shining, who was still squatting on the ground. An indiscernible warmth flashed across her eyes. She opened her mouth as if wanting to say something to her. Finally, she turned her head and said, "You guys leave. Even if you can see it, the seal set by more than 10 managers at the same time will not be easily." Rumble. Before she finished speaking, there was a sudden loud sound. Shining suddenly reached out towards the void. She seemed to have grabbed onto something and pulled hard. The entire heaven and earth shook even more violently than before. Even Fong Fong could not stand steadily. In the next moment, a huge piece of heaven and earth appeared beneath her feet. The city that was originally right in front of them was pulled further away in an instant. It completely disappeared from their vision. No. It was not that the city had run far away. It was that the void had retreated. They were just conveniently pulled to the edge of this new world by the edge of the void. Fong Fong only felt her entire body lighten. It was as if some familiar power had returned to her body instantly. She could even feel that the plane that was originally so weak that it seemed like it was about to be extinguished suddenly had an additional trace of life. A huge gap appeared in the power that was chaining her. Chapter 551. How could it be? Her face was bewildered, as if she couldn't react at all. She was completely stunned. It was clearly a seal made by more than 10 managers working together. After so long, not only was she completely helpless, she couldn't even sense where the thing that was sealing her was. Why was it so easy for her to cheat or whatever? "You'll be fine once you get used to it." Father Nyo, who was experienced, suddenly spoke. "Ha! What cheat?" Fong Fong was stunned. But Shining had already turned and walked to the side. "There are 2 more." With that said, she squatted down again, grabbed something, and pulled it up like weeds. The void retreated rapidly again. It was unbelievably easy. Fong Fong even couldn't help but start to doubt her own eyes. Those seals were so easily gone. Although she vaguely sensed from the start that she was the most capable one among the 3, that was why she mistook her as a manager. But wasn't this also a little too much? This was simply a completely different existence from managers. Then, what exactly was she? Until she pulled out the last seal, the entire world had changed completely. Although it was still barren and wasn't as vast as the plane, it was already a complete world of its own. And the void that was originally dark and boundless also instantly shrunk and deformed, becoming only a passageway the height of a person, like a plain door, hanging in mid-air. Obviously, this was the door to the Big Tao organization. "All right." Shining clapped her hands, then stood up. This." Fong Fong looked straight at Shining. That power that had been sealing her and the plane had completely disappeared. For a moment, emotions such as excitement and disbelief surged up in an instant, striking her so hard that she couldn't come back to her senses. After a long while, she finally understood. She seemed to be finally free. Her eyes instantly turned red, the sky full of water rushed out at once, even her vision began to blur. The corner of her mouth opened and closed a few times, as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, only 2 words came out. "Thank you." Other than thanking, she really couldn't think of any other words. Shining tilted her head and replied, "You're welcome. If there's nothing else, we'll leave first." Shining glanced at the two beside her, then turned and walked towards the void passageway. It was as though what happened just now was just a small interlude. Lone Moon and I Ching looked like they were used to it and followed. Just as the three of them were about to leave, Fong Fong then reacted and shouted anxiously, "Wait. Is there anything else?" The three of them turned around. "You are going to the Big Tao organization?" "I have to go take a look," Lone Moon replied. Her expression instantly turned serious. She took 2 steps forward and said, "Although you might think that I'm saying this after the fact. But please be careful of the people from the Big Tao organization. They are definitely not what they seem on the surface. Even if they send an invitation, it doesn't mean that they sincerely welcome you to join them." Lone Moon frowned and looked at her. "Why do you say that?" She gritted her teeth, and hesitation flashed across her face. After a while, she said in a low voice, "I don't know if I'm thinking too much, but after so long, I've been thinking too much." The Big Tao organization had been recruiting managers on a large scale. Who knew what scale it had reached now? "I have a feeling that they didn't establish such an organization just to protect themselves. They should have other motives." Lone Moon's expression darkened. He had thought of this as well. That place was probably not a good place indeed. A tinge of guilt suddenly surfaced on her face. "Don't tell them that you helped me escape the lockdown. It's best to pretend that you've never been here." "I understand this." Lone Moon nodded. Fong Fong was someone that the Big Tao organization wanted to lock up. They released her directly and got into trouble before even going there. Naturally, they couldn't admit it so easily. "But, regarding the fact that we've been to this world, we can't hide it even if we wanted to. Those people in the Big Tao organization were all managers. They should be able to sense where they came from." Fong Fong's face paled. She suddenly thought of something and immediately said anxiously, "Did you bring the invitation card that the Big Tao organization sent you?" Lone Moon faltered. With a turn of his hand a moment later, that white red strip instantly appeared on his hand. She hurriedly took it over. They didn't know what she did, but that silk cloth that was originally like white moonlight suddenly started to turn red. In a short while, it completely turned red. "I erased all the aura related to my plane from this silk cloth and only left the Big Tao organizations. This way, they will think that they made a mistake and cause you to enter the Big Tao organization directly." "Thank you." Lone Moon then took it. The guilt in her eyes deepened. "I'm the one who implicated you in the first place." She turned to look at Shining. She couldn't help but add, "I see that you've just become managers. And those managers of the Big Tao organization, their planes have existed for God knows how long. Their power is not something that ordinary managers can fight against. And they have a lot of people. So, please be very careful. It's best not to clash with them head-on." Lone Moon nodded. He naturally understood that although they had the cheat-ing, but if they went against so many managers, they would be the ones at a disadvantage. At most, they would just have to go through the motions. "Then what plans do you have for the future?" he casually asked. Fong Fong faltered. A moment later, she revealed a sincere smile. "I've already escaped their seal. Of course I have to hide far away from them. Then I'll rebuild my plane." Her eyes were filled with anticipation for the future. There was no longer the despair that she revealed from time to time. "Then we'll meet again," Lone Moon said and was about to turn. But Fong Fong suddenly took 2 steps forward and walked to Shen Ying's side. Full of excitement and gratitude, she pulled her hand and said, "Miss Shen, I have nothing to give you. Please take this." With that said, she stuffed a pear into her hand. This is a small sealing array made using the original source of my plane's chi. Although it's ineffective against you, it can still trap 1 or 2 ordinary managers. It might be useful if you bring it along. Shining looked at the pear in her hand. Can it be eaten? Fong Fong faltered. No, no. Oh. Shining raised her head disinterestedly. But since it was a gift, she didn't stuff it back. Thank you. Then she stuffed it into Father Nyo's hand. No, I should be the one thanking you. She didn't mind. She reminded them a few more times to be careful. Sister Pear, goodbye. Her surname wasn't Pear. The few of them then turned and passed through the tunnel. They disappeared. Fong Fong stood where she was. With a heavy expression, she looked in the direction where the few of them disappeared. Hopefully they would be fine. Chapter 552. After the few of them walked into the black tunnel, their eyes lit up in the next moment. The scenery around them changed, and they arrived at another world. This was a completely different world. In front of them was a mirror-like water surface, but there was not a single ripple on it. The clear blue sky and white clouds in the water made them feel like they were walking in the sky. The sky wasn't just filled with blue skies and white clouds. There were tens of thousands of stars, but they weren't scattered all over the place. Most of them were gathered together and emitted different dazzling colors, just like many plane trees. The surface of the water stretched as far as the eye could see, and it was completely empty. There was only a huge palace standing on the surface of the water in front of them. It was very strange. It looked very grand, and it emitted a faint white light, as if it was made of light. The whole world was filled with a thick energy. It did not seem like God power, nor was it immortal spirit chi. But it felt familiar, as if it was the power of a manager. The three of them exchanged glances before walking toward the palace. With every step they took, ripples would form beneath their feet, spreading to the entire surface of the water. As long as they lifted their feet, a crystal-clear white flower would bloom at the spot they had stepped on. It was hard to tell what it was, but it was exceptionally beautiful. Even Lone Moon was shocked. Flowers bloomed with every step. This was very cool. No wonder it was a place built by a manager. It looked quite tall. Is this caused by athlete's foot? Shining suddenly asked. Lone Moon stumbled and almost fell on the ground. Instantly, all his cool seemed to be crushed into pieces. Two unspeakable gazes landed on a certain someone in unison. What's wrong? Shining continued eating her fruit, looking at the two of them blankly. Lone Moon, Ching, it felt like all his cool would be revealed in front of Shining. Father Nyo, you're the biggest. Shining pointed to the flower beside Lone Moon's feet. Shut up. You're the one with the biggest athlete's foot, your whole family has the biggest athlete's foot. Wait. Why don't you have it? He turned back and realized that there were only 2 rows of white flowers on the water surface. They were exactly where he and Chef came from. But there was nothing behind Shining in the middle. Shining turned back to look and said seriously, I wash my feet every day. Get lost. You're just trying to get rid of the joke about athlete's foot. Maybe that's the reason. Chef suddenly pointed at the reflection on the water. Ha! Lone Moon was stunned. He hadn't noticed earlier, but now that he looked closely, he realized that the shadows that he and Chef had formed on the surface of the water were not his own. 2 trees appeared under their feet. The one under Chef's feet was a golden tree with lush foliage, while the one under his feet was a smaller, bare purple tree that looked like it had entered winter early. This was their plane tree. There was nothing beneath Shin Ying's feet, not even a reflection. Lone Moon's expression darkened. At once, he was even more fearful of the power of the so-called Big Tao organization's management. It was just a body of water, yet it could directly reflect the situation of their plane. No wonder they could silently hang that fruit on the plane tree back then. The strength of the managers inside was definitely not simple. Lone Moon and Yi Qing's expressions became more serious. They exchanged a look before continuing to walk towards the palace. The palace was extremely tall. In front of the palace was a huge stone door more than 10 feet tall. There were all kinds of unknown patterns carved on it. The few of them had just reached the door when it opened with a creak. Inside was not the appearance of an ordinary palace. Instead, it was a vast and boundless sea of stars. And connecting to the door was a path formed by the convergence of starlight. As they walked on it, there were still bits and pieces of starlight floating around, like disturbed fireflies. This was the real Starlight Avenue. Lone Moon hesitated for a moment before walking down. He followed the light all the way to a floating platform. Almost the moment they stood still, a man's voice came from all around. "This is the manager who joined this time." Lone Moon subconsciously turned to look. He saw a wisp of strange aura in front of him. Not long after, the starry sky seemed to be torn apart. A figure appeared in front of them. Then, the space beside them also changed. In a short while, more than 10 figures appeared around the platform. Each of them had an aura similar to that of him and Chef. Without a doubt, these were the managers of the Big Tao organization. He counted carefully. There were as many as 16 of them here alone. At the same time, 16's gaze swept over them. Looking at their auras, they seemed to be managers of new planes. Is the standard for joining so low now? The man who spoke first laughed coldly. It was clear that he had a problem with them. Instead, the woman beside him said, "That invitation was just sent out not long ago. Although it's a new plane, to be able to pass the test so quickly proves that they have some ability." The man on the right also chimed in. "Being able to reach here proves that they have the qualifications to join the organization and become one of us." "That's right, Tuji. Who knows, we might all be friends in the same organization in the future. Why do you have to make things difficult for them right from the start?" Another man also spoke up. "Humph." The man called Tuji snorted coldly. Still with some dissatisfaction, he said, "It's not certain whether they can join the organization or not." Chapter 553. May I ask everyone, what do these flowers mean? Lone Moon couldn't help but ask. The lady who spoke then replied, "You too might not know since it's your first time here. The water outside is called the initial water realm. It can reflect the appearance of the manager plane, and the flowers that grow can show the manager's abilities. The lighter the color, the higher the cultivation of the person. It's the first time we've seen white flowers like yours. Even among the 16 people who came to receive them, none of them were white. Was the athlete's aura used to test their abilities?" He couldn't help but turn to look at Chef, who was also confused. Their abilities were considered high among the managers? He didn't feel anything at all. Moreover, if the higher the ability, the lighter the color of the flower, then why didn't Shining even bloom? What was going on? Maybe it was because of the athlete's aura. Pooey. Because of the flowers, the 16 people on the platform looked at them with much friendlier expressions. Even Tuji, who was looking for trouble at the start, didn't mock them anymore. "Looks like I have to congratulate the two of you in advance for becoming members of the Big Tao organization." The lady's gaze became more passionate. Lone Moon held it in but didn't say anything to object. Naturally, he didn't want to join this Big Tao organization. One look and he knew it wasn't a proper organization. But Sister Fong Fong was right. There was no need to clash with them. He wasn't afraid of them. What's more, they had the plane behind them. If they joined forces against them, who knew what would happen? This was also why they made this trip instead of going back directly. They might as well pretend to join first. With such abilities, it's no wonder you passed the test so easily, the lady continued. At the same time, she raised her hand to conjure a seal, as if she wanted to do something. As long as Boss Yu hang. She suddenly paused. What's wrong? Seeing that her expression wasn't right, the people beside her instinctively asked. The small testing world disappeared. Everyone faltered. After a closer look, their expressions changed as well. They all turned to look at the person in the middle. Their passionate expressions just now all turned cold in an instant. The lady scanned the two of them from head to toe before saying in a low voice, "Both of you, we just sensed that the small testing world suddenly went out of control and disappeared without a trace. I wonder if you could tell us what happened when you passed the test." "It's here." Lone Moon stared blankly for a moment before replying, "Test? What kind of test are you talking about?" He looked as if he didn't know what was going on. "How do I enter this society? Do I need to go through a test?" "You didn't enter the test." The woman glanced at him suspiciously. "Then how did you get here?" "Of course it's because of the aura on your invitation card." Lone Moon took out the red ribbon that he had prepared earlier and activated his immortal chi. The ribbon floated towards the other party. The woman took it and glanced at it, and her face instantly darkened. On the other hand, the manager named Tuji laughed out loud as if he had found something to use against them. "Ha ha ha ha. I really thought they passed the test so quickly. Turns out they didn't even enter the test." After saying that, he looked at the woman mockingly. "Xiao Yun, how could you make such a small mistake? Let's see how you're going to explain yourself when boss arrives." "You." The woman glared at Tuji angrily. She looked at Lone Moon and I Ching with a look of reproach. She was no longer as enthusiastic as before. "What do you guys think we should do? Are we going to accept them or not?" The others exchanged looks. They didn't expect to make such a mistake. Before he could say anything, Tuji had already started yelling. "Of course not. Those who don't pass the test can't enter the society. That's the rule." Tuji glanced at them. "It's the same no matter how strong they are." "Then what do you think we should do?" Xiao Yun was also angry. She glared at him. "No wonder there's a new test. The small world for the test has already disappeared. Anyway, we can't let them enter the society so easily. What's more, they're people you found." You, seeing that the two of them were about to start arguing, someone beside them suddenly said, "Stop arguing, the two of you. Boss is here." The two of them's expressions changed. They stopped arguing at the same time. The next moment, a special suppressive force appeared in the air. This suppressive force was so strong that it was completely different from that of a manager. Even Lone Moon and I Ching were stunned. They subconsciously turned to the right. They saw the space in that direction distort. A man dressed in black suddenly appeared. He was dressed in a long black robe that was embroidered with ancient, light-colored patterns. His long hair flowed down his back like silk. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. He was very eye-catching. He looked even better than the human form of Radish. However, there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. The suppressive force just now was coming from his body. This must be the boss Yu Heng that those people were talking about. Lone Moon and I Ching couldn't help but be wary. This was not an ordinary manager. "Greetings, boss." The 16 managers present all bowed in his direction. Their expressions didn't look like they were showing respect to their colleagues. They looked more like fear. "What's the matter? Yu Heng asked directly. Xiao Yun's expression changed. She stepped forward and explained, Boss, there's a problem with the 2 managers we just invited. They came here without going through the test. Coincidentally, the small world for the test has disappeared. We can't bring them back for the test, so... What's the problem? Yu Heng asked directly. Xiao Yun's face turned even paler. She handed over the red ribbon in her hand. Boss, it's my mistake. I tied the teleportation coordinates on the invitation card wrongly. Please punish me. Yu Heng glanced at the ribbon. His expression turned even colder. He took it and asked, What do you plan to do? Xiao Yun said hesitantly, They're not bad. She was just about to tell them about the white flower. Rules are rules. Tu Ji suddenly rushed out and continued arguing. Boss, people who haven't passed the test can't join the Big Dao organization. We can't break the rules. Otherwise, wouldn't anyone be able to join? We can't just let them go back, can we? Go back. Tu Ji snorted. He scanned the few people in the middle with evil eyes. Go back for what? Have you ever sent anyone who hasn't joined the Big Dao organization back? Xiao Yun paused. She seemed to have thought of something. You mean, they broke the rules? Of course they have to pay the price. Tu Ji's eyes suddenly lit up. He looked straight at the 2 of them. Anyway, their plane is just a newborn plane that isn't that important. The powers of these 2 can be used to nourish the waters outside. Wouldn't it be better to help other members increase their powers? Chapter 554. The moment he finished speaking, everyone's eyes lit up. They looked at Lone Moon and the others as if they were sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Lone Moon frowned. He immediately understood the Big Dao organization's motive. So this is how you recruit members? He felt disgusted. He scanned the crowd and laughed coldly. What Big Dao organization? It's just a large-scale plane invader group. What did you say? Tu Ji's expression darkened. I said you are a bunch of scum. The friendliness on Lone Moon's face disappeared, replaced by anger. Suddenly, he felt that the idea of muddling through was a little stupid. On one hand, you're thinking of recruiting people into the society, but on the other hand, you're trying to kill someone else's plane. I'm sure there are more than 1 or 2 managers who have been tricked to die here by you. They took the initiative to invite others, but forced others to undergo some sort of test. What's more, according to Tu Ji's words, those who did not pass the test became vengeful spirits that nourished the water body. And Fong Fong, who rejected them from the start, had her entire plane destroyed. In other words, they would die if they agreed, and they would die if they didn't. Was there such an organization in this world? He did not want to clash with them at first, but they had no intention of letting them off. In that case, what difference did it make whether they compromised or not? What you are doing is no different from invaders. Lone Moon laughed coldly. No. You are worse than invaders. In any case, the other party was invading openly, but you guys still want to use the Big Dao to cover up your shame. Great Dao. What Dao is your Great Dao? The Dao of Annihilation. You. Tu Ji was furious. He glared at Lone Moon, but Yu Heng had not said anything. It was not appropriate for Tu Ji to make a move. He could only look at him inquiringly. Boss. Yu Heng's gaze landed on the person in the middle. That's right. Rules are rules. He clenched his fist and the red ribbon on it turned into dust. His expression darkened. What's more, not only did they go to the test site, they even let that small world escape. What? The others were shocked. They were in disbelief. They were the ones who let that small world escape. Do you think I won't be able to tell by dispersing its aura? He frowned and continued, since you were the ones who set the testing ground free, then other than using your lives to nourish the water, your plane will become the next testing ground. Yes. The 16 of them answered. Lone Moon could not be bothered to argue with him. Both he and Chef summoned their swords. That would depend on whether you have the ability to do so. So what if they had more people? In the next moment, the other side had already swarmed forward, and their figures were like afterimages as they charged towards the two of them. 8 on your left, 8 on my right. Chef summoned a sword array to block the first wave of attacks. After giving instructions, his figure flashed and he attacked with his sword. Something's wrong. Lone Moon suddenly took out something and threw it at the opposite side. A white light flashed, and 4 white walls of light rose up, directly trapping the 2 managers in front. It should be 7 per person. The pairs given by Sister Pair were indeed useful. For a time, the entire starry sky was filled with the flashes of spell techniques. At the end of the day, they were all managers. Although the battle in the air was intense, they could not see any shadows at all. Numerous powerful auras filled the entire starry sky. At that moment, the only people left on the platform were a solemn Yuhang and the 2 managers who were trapped in the white walls. Although Lone Moon and I Ching had just been promoted, this was not the first time they were fighting managers. What's more, compared to the previous manager who invaded, these few people in front of them did not seem to be at the same level. Although it was 1 against 7, the 2 of them did not seem to be at a disadvantage. They even took the opportunity to seriously injure 2 of them. The expressions of the few of them changed. Their attacks became even more ferocious. Even the starry sky around them began to distort. Tu Ji, who was fighting with Chef, was the one who was in the worst condition. He did not know if it was because he had spoken too much earlier. Every attack that the other party sent at him was more ferocious than the others. In a short while, he was already covered in wounds. Even the flow of his energy became smoother. He gritted his teeth and took advantage of the time when the other party was attacking to hide himself. He went behind the other party and used all the energy in his body to attack with all his might. Just as he was about to attack, I Ching turned around and changed the sword technique in his hand. He attacked in the direction where Tu Ji's attack came from and then dodged to the side. Then, it hit the other manager opposite him. After all, it was a full-force attack. The manager's body was immediately cut in half. With a loud thud, he fell to the ground. Even if he did not die, he was already half dead. Tu Ji did not expect to hit one of his own. He was completely stunned. However, the energy did not disappear. Instead, it mixed with I Ching's sword chi and attacked something to the right. There was a loud cracking sound. It was as if some mechanism had been activated. In the originally pitch-black starry sky, a crack appeared. It was as if the entire place was being torn apart. Lone Moon, who was already prepared, sent a ray of sword chi into the crack. He waved the sword in his hand and there was a loud crashing sound. The entire starry sky shattered like a piece of black glass. It fell one after another, faster and faster. Then, with a loud crash, the starry sky disappeared. The entire beautiful palace collapsed. Everyone returned to the body of water. The feeling that had been suppressing Lone Moon and I Ching disappeared. The remaining managers' expressions changed. Lone Moon's heart relaxed. Humph. Did they really think that they did nothing when those managers were discussing? He and Chef had already figured out that starry sky. It was a world within a world. And it was a world that completely belonged to the 16 managers. That was why their abilities were suppressed. While they were chatting, he and Chef had already discussed how to break out. Without the suppression, the two of them attacked even more fiercely. But the other side had more people after all. Although one was crippled and two were locked up, Tu Ji had lost all his fighting strength and one was seriously injured. But there were still 11 people. The two of them were having a hard time dealing with them. And the other side seemed to have noticed that they looked scattered. But in fact, they were working together from time to time. They had the intention of taking them down one by one. So they started to cooperate and attack. Seeing that the situation was in a stalemate, a pair suddenly flew out and hit the two managers who were attacking Lone Moon. In an instant, 4 walls of light rose up and trapped them inside. The pressure on Lone Moon was instantly relieved. Turning back, he saw Fong Fong standing behind, panting heavily. She looked like she had rushed over. Pair. Lone Moon was shocked. My name is Fong Fong. She glared at him. Chapter 555. Why did you come back? Didn't they say that they were going to leave and rebuild the plane? He rushed forward to help as he said, You guys helped me. I can't do something so disloyal to leave you guys and run away. She gritted her teeth, her expression fierce. Damn it, it's just one life. So what if I die? Lone Moon was stunned. He suddenly had an illusion that he was looking at the disciples of Invincible sect. Oh yes, where's Sister Shining? Is she all right? Fong Fong looked around and asked anxiously. All right, it was not an illusion at all. Could Shining have gotten the wrong male lead script? Why did a girl turn into a fangirl the moment she met her? She's fine. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. I've already left the big head for her. We're in charge of cleaning up these people. Sister Li Zi heaved a sigh of relief and focused on dealing with the person in front of her. With her addition, the two of them felt much more relaxed. Moreover, she had locked up 2 others. 9 against 3. Although Fong Fong could only hold up one of them temporarily, Lone Moon and Yi Qing were enough to fight back against 4. In an instant, the situation turned around. The remaining managers were getting more and more injured. In less than half an hour, another 2 were seriously injured. Yu Hang, who had been standing on the platform and watching the battle, frowned. He scoffed and said, Humph, you're just an ant. He suddenly took a step forward and walked to the side of the 2 people that Lone Moon had locked up in the white wall. He was just about to break the wall and let them out. But in the next moment, she felt her hand tighten. A hand suddenly reached out from the side and grabbed her wrist. Turning around, she saw a face that was smiling brightly. Sorry, you're my mission. Ha! Yu Heng was stunned. Who was this person? Where did she come from? He subconsciously retracted his hand, but found that he could not move. Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. So, can we begin? Begin, what? Before he could react, he suddenly felt a huge wave of energy surging towards him. His heart sank. He raised his hand and used all his strength to strike the other party's face. Shening reflexively let go of his hand and placed it in front of her. Yu Heng's palm landed on Shen Ying's arm. Yu Heng had used all his strength in that attack. Even the strongest manager would be crippled if not dead. However, Shening did not move at all. Yu Heng was sent flying. The recoil from the palm strike caused Yu Heng to stumble backward by more than 100 feet. On the other side, there was a loud smack. Shen Ying's hand made an awkward sound, as if she was swatting a mosquito. Yu Heng, Shening, Yu Heng was shocked. He looked at the person in front of him in disbelief. She had actually blocked his attack. Who exactly are you? That was a good question, but she didn't know how to answer it either. So, she asked back, why do all of you, as villains, like to ask the same question. Yu Heng's face darkened. Instantly, his embarrassment turned into anger. I don't care who you are. Don't even think about leaving here alive today. His expression darkened. His entire aura changed. The frightening aura around him suddenly became 10 times stronger. As if knowing that the other party was not easy to deal with, he used all his strength. She had blocked his attack at such a close distance just now without a scratch. This proved that she was only good at close combat. As long as he kept his distance, the other party might not be his match. Is that so? Suddenly, the other party's voice rang in his ear. The person who was more than 100 feet away just now was directly behind him. He did not even see the other party's figure clearly. In the next moment, an air pierced through the air. He felt a sharp pain in his back. There was also a faint sound of something breaking. His entire body was like a cannonball that had been released. He flew straight toward the water, creating a huge wave that swept out in all directions. At the same time, the few managers who were fighting with Lone Moon, Fang Qi, and Fang Qi were also swept up. Lone Moon, Qin, Fang, weren't they a little unnecessary? Master. I Ching kept the sword and retreated. Lone Moon and Fang flew toward Shining. Shining, are you all right? Fang asked worriedly. Shining hesitated. As if only just noticing her, she waved a hand in greeting. Hey, pear girl. Fang froze. Was that pear the only thing she remembered? The huge wave finally stopped. Yu Heng, who had been sent flying, finally stood up shakily. However, he was the only one standing up. The managers who had been hit by the wave could no longer get up. Yu Heng was also seriously injured. The punch on his back was secondary. All the energy in his body seemed to have been scattered. He could not gather it at all. Even standing up was a little difficult for him. He was shocked. His eyes were filled with hatred and caution as he stared at the person in front of him. He never thought that the other party would have such terrifying power. He could not withstand just one blow. Who was this person? This was not the power of a manager at all. Could it be? He seemed to have thought of something. His face paled instantly. His eyes widened and he looked at Shining in disbelief. You are a monitor. What? The four of them were stunned. What was this? Yu Heng thought that they had admitted it. His gaze became even more vicious. Even his originally pleasing face became slightly twisted. I never thought that there would really be a monitor. The fear on his face deepened. Suddenly, he gritted his teeth as if he had made up his mind about something. If that's the case, I can only give it my all. I want to see if you, the monitor, are really as the rumors say. His expression changed. The aura on his body became thicker and thicker. Even the surrounding waters seemed to be stimulated by something and started to boil. Lone Moon was stunned. He suddenly had a bad feeling. What's wrong? Fang was also shocked, but in the next moment, she felt her whole body sink, as if there was some terrifying pressure sweeping over. Her legs trembled, she felt her blood and qi churning, and instantly had the illusion that she was about to be crushed. Shining, who was still at the side, pulled her along, some kind of gentle energy covered over, only then did her whole body relax, and she stood up straight. Turning around, she saw that Lone Moon and I Ching were also looking very serious. Suddenly, the ground beneath Yu Heng's feet seemed to have been dyed black. A large patch of black began to spread. The water that had originally seemed to contain the blue sky now looked like it had been dyed with black ink. It spread across the entire body of water. In an instant, it was about to reach their feet. Lone Moon's heart sank. He subconsciously turned around and was instantly shocked. The managers who were locked up have disappeared. Shining. Chapter 556. Shining had already rushed over, but she was still one step too late. Yuheng seemed to be prepared for this. In a flash, he disappeared from his original spot. Shining missed her target. The next moment, Yuheng appeared in the sky. Lone Moon and the other two rushed over as well. Lone Moon looked around and realized that the managers who were lying on the ground had all disappeared. Everything around them had turned into a pitch-black body of water. What was going on? What was Yuheng trying to do? Those managers, are you looking for them? As if he could guess what they were thinking, Yuheng, who was in the sky, smiled sinisterly. Beside him were the 16 managers, including the 4 who had just been locked up. Some of them were still unconscious. However, all of them were tied up by black threads and could not move. Boss! Tu Ji was panicking. He looked down at the black threads that bound him tightly. What are you? Yuheng did not answer. Instead, he looked down at Shining. He looked excited. I just wanted to find a way to slowly improve my abilities. I didn't think that I would attract the legendary monitors. But that's good too. With that, he waved his hand and grabbed Tu Ji, who was closest to him. In the next moment, Tu Ji turned into a red fog and entered Yuheng's body. The thick black around Yuheng slowly turned into a strange red. Tu Ji did not even have time to scream. In the next moment, he turned into dust. Not even his bones were left. Yuheng's aura became even thicker. The suppressive force around him became even stronger. Lone Moon's heart jumped. He finally understood why Yuheng had taken the 16 managers away. It was not to save them. Oh no, he's absorbing the manager's energy. Quick, stop him. But it was too late. Ha 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 ha. Yuheng laughed maniacally. The fear on his face had long disappeared. Instead, he looked greedy. Once I've absorbed them, it'll be your turn. With your energy, no plane will be able to stop me in the future. He was getting more and more excited. The black chi around his body dissipated. The remaining managers glowed with different colors and started to rush into Yuheng's body. For a moment, red, blue, yellow, all sorts of energies melted into the darkness around him, dyeing his originally pure black aura into a sea of colors. At the same time, the suppressive force around them became heavier. They could even feel that the layer of energy that Shining used to protect them was being shaken, as if it was going to break at any time. They could not even rush out to stop it. F***CK. Lone Moon cursed under his breath. Those managers were Yuheng's subordinates after all. Yuheng actually absorbed their energy without hesitation. It looked like this so-called Big Tao organization had always been a cover for them to invade other planes. They were just using other managers to increase their own power. But looking at how he had fused the energy of more than 10 managers, there might be more than before. He and Chef were not afraid of facing 16 people directly. But if it was now, none of them would be able to fight Yuheng. Shining was the only exception. But no matter how powerful Shining was, she was only slightly stronger than a manager. Could she really defeat her opponent? He turned around worriedly. Shen. He saw that Shining was still as lazy as before. No, she was even lazier than before. It was as if she did not see what was happening in the sky. She even took out a fruit and continued to chew on it. When she heard him speak, she tilted her head and replied, "Huh?" Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Was this the time to eat fruit? Ha 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 ha. Yuheng had already absorbed all the energy of the managers. He looked at them as if they were dead. It's your turn. Lone Moon panicked. Quick, think about what we should do. With that, he and I Ching subconsciously stood in front of Shining. I'm thinking. Shining answered as she chewed on her fruit. I only have one question that I can't figure out. What question? Do you think? She suddenly pointed at the man who was flying towards them with a sinister smile. He just ate so many things. Won't he have diarrhea? Ha! What kind of question was that? Gulp, suddenly, a strange sound came from the sky. Yu Hang, who was attacking them, stopped in his tracks. His face paled and he suddenly bent over and hugged his stomach, revealing a pained expression. Lone Moon, Qing, Fong, the situation was extremely awkward. See, didn't I say he would have diarrhea? Shining replied. How could that be? How could this be? Yu Hing seemed to be in so much pain that he fell from the sky with a loud thud. He hugged his stomach and rolled on the ground. The arrogant expression on his face was now one of agony. The few of them took a closer look and saw that Yu Heng's body seemed to be splitting apart. Suddenly, cracks appeared all over his body. In the middle of those cracks, the various types of energy that Yu Heng had absorbed earlier were desperately trying to escape. It was as if they were trying to break free from his control. Yu Heng, on the other hand, looked like he was in disbelief. His eyes were filled with madness. Impossible. I was able to absorb those types of energy earlier. How could there be a backlash? That's impossible. He suddenly thought of something and turned to glare at Shining. It's you. What did you do? Shining paused. You're having diarrhea and you're blaming me. I didn't do anything. She walked a few steps closer and scanned him from head to toe. You look like you have nothing better to do. Lone Moon, Qing, Fong, why did she feel that this explanation made so much sense? Yu Heng had obviously absorbed the energy of all 16 managers at the same time. Chapter 557. Lone Moon's heart tightened. Holy shit, he actually called so many managers over. More and more plane doors appeared in the sky. In a short while, the entire sky was filled with people. There were at least 100 of them. Ha 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 ha. Yu Heng laughed even more wildly. None of you can escape. All of you have to die. Are you sure? Shining interrupted him, her expression darkening. Suddenly, an energy that was completely different from that of a manager swept across the entire water realm. The managers who had just appeared felt their bodies sink. In the next moment, they fell from the sky like dumplings. They were pressed into the water, unable to move. All the energy in their bodies dissipated. They could not gather any energy at all. Boundless fear enveloped the entire space. This power came suddenly, but it was so strong that it was beyond imagination. Everyone did not even have time to react before they were already on the ground. They did not even have the slightest intention to resist. Even Lone Moon and the other two people subconsciously swayed, and instantly had the urge to kneel down. Yu Heng's eyes widened in disbelief. What, exactly are you? In the next moment, he could not take it anymore. His entire body exploded. All sorts of lights shot out from his body and then disappeared. The entire water realm returned to normal. Only the dumplings were left on the ground. The dumplings, who were they? Where were they? What just happened? Lone Moon did a head count and found that there were a total of 106 dumplings, 106 managers in the Big Dao organization. Including Yu Heng and the 16 who had been sucked dry, there were a total of 123 people. Team 123 was rather neat. As for how to deal with these managers, they did not make things difficult for them. According to them, most of them had actually been forced to join the Big Tao organization by Yuheng. Their reason was similar to before. Rather than being targeted and destroyed, they might as well pretend to be obedient. After joining, they then realized that their planes had been locked in the starry sky of this water realm. Every move they made was under Yuheng's surveillance. This was also the reason why Yuheng had been able to drag all of them here so quickly even before his death. And those 16 people were obviously Yuheng's trusted subordinates. They were in charge of all the planes' recruitment. They had always been absorbing new planes, but for some reason, these managers would often miss 1 or 2 planes. They knew that there was a problem, but they did not dare to resist. After all, Yuheng was stronger than all of them. His 16 trusted subordinates were all extraordinary as well. In addition, the plane was being restrained. Even if they dared to join forces, they were no match for him, so they could only stay. Hence, after Yuheng's death, these people did not even talk about avenging him. They were so excited that they almost set off firecrackers to celebrate. It could be said that he was very happy to accept his defeat. Although there were a few who didn't look too good, they were managers after all, and they represented a plane. If something were to happen to them, their plane would not be any better off. Lone Moon discussed it with Chef and decided not to do anything to them. As for the managers who disappeared, these people did not know, but Lone Moon and the others did. Without a doubt, Yuheng and the others must have absorbed all their energy and disappeared. At the end of the day, this Big Tao organization was created by Yuheng and the others to improve their abilities. If they did not come, these managers would have died in their hands sooner or later. Boss. A man in white looked in Shen Ying's direction and weakly raised his hand. We really do not want to stay in this Big Tao organization anymore. But our plane has always been locked near this part of the universe. Since you are so powerful, can you help us separate? As soon as he said this, the eyes of the other 100 or so managers who were kneeling on the ground lit up, and they raised their heads with sparkling eyes. Lone Moon thought about it. That's true. So many plane trees were transplanted here, and they could not leave. Of course it was not a good thing. First of all, it was not conducive to the development of the plane. Planes would often collide with each other, and there would naturally be more plane storms and gaps. Moreover, with so many managers gathered together, who knew when a terrorist organization would be formed? Hence, he turned to the person beside him and asked, Shening, do you have a way to separate them? He suddenly remembered when she helped Pair Z previously. You should be able to see what's locking them, right? I can see it. Shening nodded. Then help them. Separate them. Go back to where you came from, don't squeeze together. The eyes of the dumplings lit up even more. They looked at Shening expectantly. Shening raised her head to take a look. Her body slumped down lazily. So troublesome. Let's have extra food today. Yes, Father Nyo, no problem, Father Nyo. Shening stood up immediately and said seriously, but it is indeed quite troublesome to separate them one by one. Lone Moon's expression darkened. But before he lost his temper, she quickly added, why don't we do it together? Together? What together? Everyone was stunned. Before they could react, they saw Shening suddenly take a few steps back. She threw away the fruit core in her hand and suddenly clenched her fist. She punched the water under her feet. Following that, there was a dull sound. Everyone felt a layer of waves sweep over them. In the next moment, they heard a series of cracking sounds. The sound became louder and clearer. They saw that on the originally calm water surface, white cracks suddenly appeared. In an instant, they covered the entire water surface like a pearl net. The entire water surface broke apart like a broken mirror. Those cracks even began to spread toward the starry sky above their heads. The dumplings were all stunned. This starry sky and water surface were created by the combined energy of several resistors in the U region. That was why they could not escape at all. Compared to breaking away from a plane, it was obviously more difficult to destroy this place. But she just did it with one punch. Were they blind? But in the next moment, the dumplings were not in the mood to think about this problem. Because they felt a long-lost feeling. The feeling of freedom. My plane lock is gone. Me too. We finally don't have to be locked here. That's great. Is this a miracle? My plane can actually really leave this starry sky. Free, we're finally free. The dumplings were more excited than the last. Some even jumped up directly. Their faces were full of joy, as if they had been given a new life. Chapter 558. The plane trees that were originally made up of stars started to disappear one by one. As the cracks in the sky spread to the entire horizon, not a single tree was left. All that was left was a pitch-black, broken starry sky that was full of cracks. Following that, there was another rumbling sound. The entire sky started to collapse like a falling ceiling. Large amounts of chaotic chi surged into this space. Lone Moon glanced at the group of dumplings who were still cheering happily. He could not help but remind them, all right, stop jumping around. Your planes have already broken away. Hurry up and do what you have to do. This space is about to return to chaos. Everyone was stunned. Then, they quietened down. They looked at each other for a while, then turned towards the few of them and said in unison, "Thank you, everyone, for your help." With that, they bowed. Although everyone's etiquette was different and they all had their own postures, all of them looked very serious. Enchanting nodded. "You should be thanking us. Dumplings, all right, hurry up and return to your planes." Only then did everyone open their planar gates and disappear one by one. Lone Moon looked up at the almost completely collapsed space. He hurriedly opened his plane gate and waved to the few of them. "Let's go, we're going back too." The few of them then followed him back. The Divine Realm. This trip to the Big Tao organization was originally just to travel around and learn from other planes. They did not expect to get involved in such a mess. They had to admit that it was tiring. That's right. Lone Moon suddenly thought of something. Yu Hang and the others are already dead. What will happen to the planes they were originally managing? A plane without a manager would probably be very miserable. Just like the God Fiend from before, and Hong Meng and the others. Shening stuffed a piece of pastry into her mouth. After a while, she answered, "Their world's consciousness will choose a new manager." Although this might be a long process, it was their own doing. Lone Moon sighed. Yu Hang and the others died for nothing. Although the millions of living beings in their world were very innocent. But when he attacked other planes previously, he did not think about the living beings in other planes. It could only be said that their plane had chosen such a manager, so they had to bear the consequences. Lone Moon thought of something and turned to look at Shening. "As a manager, I don't have to take such a big risk every time, do I? Invading from time to time." For the umpteenth time, he regretted taking this position. Shening stiffened and immediately smiled. "How can that be? Father Nyo. Are there still a lot of good people?" "Good person." Lone Moon's face darkened. He turned to point at Pear beside him and said, "A good person like her. The kind that played a trick on people and then stabbed them in the back. Her missing soul was not so easy to recuperate. The best way was to enter samsara. But once she entered samsara, the past would be forgotten. By then Mushroom would no longer be Mushroom. She herself was also unwilling. Fortunately, Fatty had been nourishing her with immortal herbs and spirit pills all these years. Her body was also very good. In addition, Fatty asked Rabbit for guidance on many demon cultivation methods. Under Fatty's supervision, Mushroom even rose by 2 levels. Now she was already a 7th level Mushroom. This matter with Mushroom made Lone Moon realize a problem. Previously, he had always been concerned about the human race, and forgot about the demon and beast races. When the plane first opened, all the races were actually at the starting point. The human race was naturally weak, so they needed cultivation methods, but it did not mean that other races did not need it. Moreover, the human and demon races were both in the mortal realm. Although they were separated from each other previously, it was not insurmountable. Conflict was inevitable. The human race had been constantly improving, but the demon race was still at the starting point. In the future, it was not impossible for the demon race to be wiped out. That would be too much of a pity. After all, there were still many good demons like Rabbit. Moreover, the plane also had to maintain the diversity of races. So he instructed Fatty to also put the demon race's cultivation inheritance on the agenda. She reached out and tapped on the symbol. The symbol flickered, and in the next moment, an unfamiliar male voice rang out. "Little Ing, I've never heard of the matter that you're talking about. I've asked a few acquaintances for you, but they're not clear about the situation either. If not, you can go to the association to do some research, otherwise." There was a hint of a smile in the voice. "You can only ask your sister. Don't worry, I'll help you put in a good word." In the next moment, the voice was cut off, but the familiarity in the voice was obvious, as if it was really a friend that they hadn't met for a long time. "Master, this is..." I Ching couldn't help but speak. For some reason, a faint panic rose in his heart. This person who spoke, is he from another plane? Lone Moon also asked. "What are you looking for him to investigate?" "Nothing much." Shining turned off the light screen and continued to slump back on the chair. Then she answered, "That person last time, didn't he mention something about a monitor? I was curious, so I asked around." The two of them then recalled that Yu Heng from the Big Dao organization had indeed said that Shining was some sort of monitor. At that time, they were busy fighting and didn't pay much attention. Now that they thought about it, he seemed to be extremely fearful of it. Lone Moon suddenly recalled that a while ago, Shining said that after she went into hibernation, there were some changes in her body that even she herself didn't know about. Could it be related to this? His heart sank, and he instantly became a little nervous. It's a pity that no one has heard of it. Shining took out a fruit and habitually nibbled on it. "Is there no other way?" Lone Moon asked. He kept feeling that if he could figure this out, he would be able to find out the cause of Xin Ying's body. What was that person talking about checking the information about? It's the information about the administrative committee. Administrative committee. Lone Moon and I Ching exchanged a look. This was the second time they heard Shining mention this association. "Didn't you say that it's an unreliable organization? Why is there still information about it?" "The administrative committee has a reference room." Shining tilted her head and explained, "It was built by everyone when they were bored. Usually, when something big happens in each plane, it will be submitted to the reference room for other managers who encounter similar situations." Summing up experience, this was a good idea. It seemed like this administrative committee wasn't so unreliable after all. "Oh, right." She thought of something and added, "Father Nyo, last time when I hacked your server, I uploaded this information." Motherf ****. Shameless scavenger. "Then Master, are we going there now?" I Ching asked. "Not now, we'll talk about it later." "Wait for what?" Lone Moon glanced at him. Wasn't it better to investigate this matter as soon as possible? Wait for my sister to leave. Shining said seriously, I've already informed an assistant classmate from the same batch. My sister happens to be there. When she leaves, they will give me a signal. We'll go then. Lone Moon, Iching, although very cowardly, but why did he strangely want to give her a thumbs up for planning ahead? After so many years, this Shining was finally reliable for once. Thus, the three of them obediently stayed in the divine realm for a long time. Midway, they even had lunch, had some afternoon tea and some snacks. Shinying's wristband beeped again. This time, on the light screen that popped out, there was a huge explosion of fireworks, accompanied by a festive accompaniment. All right, the signal is here. Shining then stood up and reached out to open a plane door. Let's go. Why did they suddenly have the illusion that they were meeting up with an underground gang? Lone Moon and Yi Qing looked speechless. Only then did they follow Shining through the plane door. They only felt that the scenery in front of them changed. The next moment, they arrived at a pure white space. There was nothing around them, only white. Chapter 560. This is the administrative committee. Lone Moon was stunned. This is the transfer station. Shining pointed to the right and said, it's after that door. The two of them turned around and realized that there was a huge door on their right. It was erected there. They could not tell what material it was made of, it was snow white all over, almost blending into this pure white space. If not for Shinying's reminder, they would not have noticed it. And there were many strange pictures carved on the door. Upon closer inspection, those pictures were actually alive, still moving continuously. Let's go, we'll be there when we push the door open. Shining walked forward quickly, familiar with the place. Lone Moon and Yi Qing followed suit and looked up at the strange door. They could not help but sigh in admiration. Just standing in front of the door, they could feel a sense of solemnity. The administrative committee must not be any worse. They could not help but deny what Shining said previously. No matter what, it was a formal organization where managers gathered. It should not be that bad. Shining reached out and pushed lightly. It looked like a very heavy door, but it opened directly. He did not know if it was because the previous Big Dao organization gave him too much of an impression. Coming to a formal organization this time, Lone Moon could not help but be a little excited. He could not help but take a deep breath and walked in. The next moment, the scenery in front of them changed again. They instantly appeared in a large hall. At the same time, they heard an unfamiliar high-pitched voice. 2. 1. You're all in the same color, hurry, give me money, give me money. Ha 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 ha. There was a square table in the hall, more than 10 people sat around it, 4 of them were touching the many square objects on the table left and right. Everyone was exceptionally free and unrestrained, not sticking to a single pattern. Some were scratching their feet, some were eating melon seeds, some were eating melon seeds at the side. The ground was already covered with a thick layer of fruit shells. Yi Qing, Lone Moon, sorry to disturb. They went the wrong way. What the hell? Don't tell me these people are all managers, it's too disillusioned. Ah! Littling, why are you here? A certain someone who was eating melon turned around, a trace of surprise in his eyes. The rest of them also turned around and greeted in surprise. Yo, Littling, long time no see. You haven't come back to see us for a long time after graduation. Oh, right, your sister just left. I know. Shining pursed her lips. That was why she was here. Why are you still so afraid of your sister? Thinking of something, he pointed at the mahjong table and said, do you want to play a few rounds? You can have my seat. Before Shining could answer, a girl who was munching on melon seeds raised her hand and smacked the back of his head. Do you want to die? Play mahjong with little Ing. Be careful, if little Jing finds out, she'll beat you to death. It can't be. The man scratching his feet scratched his head. How old is little Ing? Why is she still so strict? The man immediately shivered. He couldn't afford to offend him. I'm not playing anymore. Xining shook her head and reached out. Give me some melon seeds. All right. The woman who had just patted the man's foot snapped her fingers. Suddenly, an unopened bag of spiced melon seeds appeared in her hand. She raised her hand and handed it over. Xining naturally took it and thanked her. The woman turned to look at the two people beside her. It was as if she had just noticed them. Who are these two unfamiliar faces? Your little lovers. That's half right. Xining opened the melon seeds and introduced them. Chef, Father Nyo. The woman was shocked. You sisters have a father. She hadn't heard Xinjing mention this before. We just got to know each other not too long ago. Got to know each other. Xinjing didn't break your legs. You're awesome. She even dared to call him father. I Ching, Lone Moon, oh, right, I heard from your sister that you're a manager now. Why did you suddenly come back this time? The woman continued asking. I encountered something. I'm here to check some information. Oh, then go to the information room to check. The woman nodded and pointed to the room on the right. She suddenly thought of something and narrowed her eyes. She looked at Xining warmly and said, Oh, Mila happens to be inside too. With that said, she pushed Xining deliberately. I know. Xining tilted her head. I asked him to come. I see. The other gave her an even more meaningful look. All right, I won't hold you young people up any longer. Hurry up if you want to check. With that said, she stood up and directly dragged Xining to the room on the right. Lone Moon and I Ching were just about to follow, but were pulled back by the woman from each side. Why are you two following? Come back, come back. You're newcomers, right? The old rule of our administrative committee is that newcomers go to the table and play 3 rounds first. Don't you agree? With that said, she winked at the people who were circling in front. Everyone was stunned. They looked at the room and reacted instantly. They all nodded in agreement. Yes. Play 3 rounds first. With that said, they pressed the 2 of them onto the table. Lone Moon didn't mind. Only I Ching looked worried. He looked back at the room on the right from time to time, feeling an ominous premonition. Perhaps it was because of the newcomers, these 10-over-old foxes of the administrative committee seemed especially excited. All of them looked like they were determined to do it. They didn't care if there were people who didn't understand the rules at all. At the beginning, everyone looked like they wanted to kill them all. But slowly, they realized that things seemed to be different from what they thought. They were clearly 2 newcomers. One of them didn't understand the rules at all. But after playing 2 rounds, it was as if they had opened up the conception and governing vessels. They were able to make a lot of noise. Lone Moon was good at playing mahjong. After all, he was a person who had been a CEO for a few years. It was said that business was either done on the gambling table or through negotiations on the mahjong table. He was a person who had a deep understanding of mahjong. Naturally, he was very good at it. As for Chef, other than losing a few rounds at the beginning because he didn't know the rules, he never lost again. The entire mahjong table seemed to be under them. Either Chef won, or Lone Moon won. The other 2 instantly turned into professional gunners. They only cared about shooting. Sometimes, they even fired one shot in a row. You walk over and let me do it. I don't believe it. The people watching at the side couldn't take it anymore. They directly changed people. After all, this concerned the seriousness of the old foxes. But even if they changed people, it didn't have any effect. Those who should win, those who should draw, those who should shoot were still shooting. 3 waves of people were changed. It was the same. Everyone, in an instant, most of the people's chips were piled in front of the 2 of them. Seeing that they were about to be wiped out, Lone Moon finally took the initiative to withdraw. He politely expressed that it was better not to disturb the seniors' leisure time. They had already played a few rounds. Chapter 561. Everyone's eyes lit up and they all nodded in agreement. Dealing with 1 person was better than dealing with 2, so they happily took over. They concentrated their firepower on Chef, but they still couldn't win. Once Lone Moon left, the number of cannoneers on the table increased from 1 to 3. The last bit of chips left belonged to Chef. He had lost everything. Everyone felt a little embarrassed. At this moment, Lone Moon suddenly came forward, smiling amiably and saying, "Senior has no chips, it's all right. If Senior thinks highly of me, why don't you take mine first? When I win, at most I'll give you 1% of the profit." Good brother. You're so sensible. The other party was delighted, hurriedly took the chips in his hand and joined in another round of battle. And it was getting more and more intense, only this time it wasn't against Chef, but each had their own wins and losses. This gave them even more confidence, and they played even more energetically. In the end, Chef also retreated with a pile of chips, sitting at the side to watch the battle, but his eyes kept glancing at the still tightly shut room. This mahjong battle only came to an end after more than 3 hours, with Chef and Father Nyo, mainly Father Nyo's overall victory, although he didn't sit at the table after that, he just lent money at the side. By the time everyone reacted, not only had everyone lost all their chips, they even owed him a huge debt. The kind where they received a dozen IOUs. Everyone, where exactly did Littling find these 2 gambling gods? They were too scary. Just as the few of them were still thinking about how much they owed Lone Moon, the door of the reference room finally creaked open, and Shining walked out. "Master." I Ching was delighted, directly stood up and walked quickly to greet her. Yet another figure followed closely from the reference room, dressed in a completely different outfit from them, neat short hair, a hint of a smile on his handsome face, and faintly looking at Shining with some affection. I Ching stopped in his tracks. "There isn't even a reference room, looks like you can't escape." Mila smiled and teased. "Does it have anything to do with you?" Shining glanced at him. "Don't say that, after all I'm the only one who can speak to your sister." "Forget it, we'll talk about it later." Shin Ying's expression darkened. "Thanks for this. Don't mention it. Your problem is my problem." Moss, I Ching took a deep breath and continued walking forward. He did not know why, but he felt a little flustered. He clenched his fists and asked, "Did you find out?" "No." Shining replied, frowning. "Then, let's think of another way." I Ching took another step forward, subconsciously reaching out to hold her hand. Shining was stunned, but she quickly shrank back and avoided his touch. She shrank back a little quickly and even turned her body slightly, as if she couldn't wait to disassociate herself from him. Chef, who had grabbed nothing, was stunned. His face instantly turned pale. This was the first time his master had avoided him. For a moment, he felt as if something sour and bitter was surging up. Inexplicably, he felt somewhat sad. Lone Moon, who was still sitting on the bench, glanced at the unfamiliar man who was smiling warmly and talking to Shining, then looked at Chef, his eyes narrowed, and turned to the person beside him. "Brother, who is that?" "What?" That person was stunned for a moment. His gaze shifted away from the card table for a moment and he looked up. "Oh, that's me Lo. He's a plain assistant, he often comes here to play." "Is he very close to Shining?" Of course, when Littling was in school, she came to the administrative committee with him and studied together for a period of time. They can be considered classmates. Other than classmates, there's no other relationship. That person was stunned. He turned back to look at him, then looked up at the two people over there, his eyes narrowing into a line. "Of course there is." He smiled with a somewhat sly expression. "Let me tell you, Milo is Little Ying's first love. There's such a thing." No wonder the manager who dragged Shining to the reference room previously had that kind of expression. Lone Moon was stunned. He looked at Chef, who had a desolate look on his face, and silently lit a candle. "Is he your assistant?" Milu glanced at Chef and sized him up curiously. Shining nodded. "I heard from Sister Jing that you're already a manager, and you have 2 assistants. I didn't expect you to become a manager so quickly." "Congratulations, Littling." Shining glanced at him. "What's so good about being a manager?" "Why not? Weren't you always trying very hard to catch up to your sister? Now you finally realize it." Shining did not reply. She paused for a while before saying, "I'm tired, I'm going back." "All right." The gentleness in his eyes deepened as he smiled even more tenderly. "Look for me anytime in the future if you have any problems. If you want to ask your sister about this, you can also tell me in advance. I'll cover for you." Shining stiffened for a moment. After a while, she chuckled at him and said word by word, "Thank you." "Ha ha ha." He smiled even more gently. "With our relationship, what's there to stand on ceremony for?" Shining then turned and walked away. After a few steps, she realized that there was no one beside her. Chef was standing in the same spot and did not follow. So she turned back and called again. "Chef." I Ching was stunned. Then, as if awakened from a dream, he quickly caught up. "Master. Let's go home." With that said, she turned back to look at the person holding a stack of notes in front of the table. "Father Nyo. Coming." Lone Moon then stood up and smiled brightly at everyone at the table. "Seniors, then we'll meet again." Everyone's mouth twitched. The man scratching feet at the side even directly said, "Let's not meet again." If they continued to lose, they would even lose their underwear. "Oh yes, brother." He could not help but ask, "What did you do before you became a manager?" He was so good at playing mahjong and even knew how to take the opportunity to lend money. "Nothing much. I just opened a small company." "Oh, then, I accidentally became the richest man." The man scratching feet, everyone, they cursed in their hearts, not knowing if they should say it. Divine Realm. "Master, the pastries are ready." Chef walked over and placed a plate of freshly made pastries on the table. "Oh, Shining nodded. Just as she was about to say something, she realized that Chef had already turned back to the kitchen and picked up the spatula to stir-fry. However, his gaze was not on the pot. She did not know where he was looking, but he did not move for a long time. Shining tilted her head and turned to look at Lone Moon. "Father Nyo, what's wrong with Chef?" Lone Moon was stunned. He followed her gaze and looked. "What do you mean what's wrong? Isn't it good? That chili stir-fried meat," he added salt 3 times. Lone Moon frowned. He took a closer look at the person in the kitchen. As if thinking of something, he asked, "What's wrong with him? Don't you know? Should I know? Shouldn't you know? Are you a repeater?" Chapter 562. Oh yes, how's your information coming along? Lone Moon thought about it and changed the topic. I didn't find anything. Shining shook her head. She had searched through the entire administrative committee's information room, but there was no information about that monitor. It was as if that title was just Yu Heng's imagination. I helped you ask those managers who play mahjong. Lone Moon glanced at her and said, none of them have heard of that term. Oh. Shining responded and continued to slump on the chair like mud. What do you plan to do? Nothing. You're not planning to continue investigating? Lone Moon glared at her. There's nothing in the information room. What if that person really made it up? You're just freaking lazy. Didn't you say that this might have something to do with the changes in your body? Maybe. Shining picked up a piece of pastry and stuffed it into her mouth. She paused. After a while, she put it down again and said, it's just a feeling. But the administrative committee doesn't have it, so I can only ask my sister. She's seen many managers. Then ask. Lone Moon said anxiously. This has something to do with your body. No matter how scared you are, you have to ask your sister. Shining turned to look at him with an inexplicable look, with an indescribable expression. What? Lone Moon felt goosebumps all over his body. Father Nyo. She suddenly sighed and said, you and Chef are managers now. Nonsense. Didn't you push it to us? Why did she say that? Then do you remember why I came to this plane in the first place? Of course it's to take over the plane. He stopped mid-sentence and widened his eyes. Shining then continued, I came to take over this plane, but I'm no longer a manager. Other people may not be able to tell, but my sister definitely can. So what do you think my sister will do when she finds out that I have nothing to do with this plane? Catch her back. Definitely, and definitely. Lone Moon's expression darkened. Given Shinjing's level of siscon, she would never let her continue to wander around this plane. So, not only can I not take the initiative to ask my sister, but I also need to avoid appearing in front of her. She explained seriously, then narrowed her eyes, picked up the plate on the table and handed it over. What do you think? Yes. Lone Moon nodded. What she said made sense. He grabbed a piece of pastry and said, then recently we... Pfft, holy shit. Why is this pastry sour? Her teeth almost fell out. Shining immediately retracted her hand and pretended not to know anything. Did Chef knock over a bottle of vinegar? Lone Moon drank several cups of tea before he managed to suppress the sour taste in his mouth. Turning to look at a certain someone who was still cooking in the kitchen, he suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but say, oh right, about your body, don't tell me you didn't tell Chef. I did mention it a little, but I was afraid that he would be too worried, so I didn't go into details. She lowered her head and looked at the plate of food on the table. It was clearly not up to a certain someone's cooking standards. Since you know that people will be worried, you should explain some things more clearly, Lone Moon said meaningfully. Ha. Shining paused. Ha what ha? Lone Moon glared at her and pushed the pastry on the table a little further away. With a serious expression, he said, tell me honestly, what exactly is your relationship with that Milu? Who? Stop pretending. Lone Moon raised his eyebrows. It's that fellow who was waiting for you in the information room. Oh, you mean Hua Hua. What the hell Hua Hua, would you die if you didn't give people nicknames? Hua Hua should be considered, my classmate. Just a classmate. Lone Moon narrowed his eyes suspiciously. What else? I heard from the people from the management that he... Before he could finish, he suddenly heard a few beeps. His and Shen Ying's wristbands lit up with red lights at the same time. At the same time, there were signs of the plane door activating. He stood up abruptly. Is it an invasion? No. Shening explained. It was rare that she took the initiative to open the plane door. I called it. In the next moment, a familiar-looking man walked out of the plane door. He was dressed in a suit and looked handsome. He looked up toward Shening and smiled. His entire person was like the warm sun in winter. Little Ing, I'm here. It was me Lu whom they met once at the entrance of the information room. Clang! Suddenly, the sound of something being smashed came from behind. The three of them instinctively turned to look. Chef was standing at the entrance of the kitchen looking over in a daze. There was a plate of food that had just been overturned at his feet. Sorry, master. I'll make it again. Chef hurriedly squatted down and tried to pick up the broken plate on the ground. He seemed to be frightened himself and actually forgot to use his sorcery. Was his hands shaking from being tired from cooking? Shening suddenly started to reflect on whether she was mistreating her employees. After thinking for a moment, she immediately waved her hand and said, "Don't cook today. Chef, come over too." Yi Qing paused. His expression immediately darkened. But he still nodded obediently. Yes, master. These two are your assistants. Milu looked curiously at Lone Moon and Yi Qing. Shening nodded and continued. All right, let's get down to business. Little Ing. Mi Li's expression darkened slightly. With a slightly sad tone, he said, I avoided so many people and rushed here in such a hurry to help you. You don't even care about me. You didn't treat me like this in the past. Oh. Shening glanced at him. You want me to care about you? Mi Li's body stiffened for a moment. Chapter 563. I knew, Little Ing, you still care about me. Milu smiled like a sunflower instantly, becoming even more brilliant. He reached into his pocket and took out a square box and placed it on the table. In the next moment, a blue light lit up on it and a three-dimensional image appeared on the table. It was a huge colorful whirlpool that looked like a galaxy map. But it was even more chaotic and was changing at any time. Shening frowned. The end of the void. That's right. Milu nodded, a trace of nostalgia flashed across his eyes. I still remember that this is the place where we had our first trial. What's the end of the void? Lone Moon couldn't help but ask. It's the mixed plane in the void. Milu said. Void? Wasn't there nothing in the void? Why was there still a plane? This place is different from the ordinary void. He smiled and explained. When a plane moves towards its end, it should theoretically be swallowed by chaos. But this place, because when the plane collapsed, a void was created at the same time. So it achieved a balance with chaos and instead stabilized the plane, but the original living beings were wiped out. And because of this, many living beings of collapsed planes have nowhere to go and can only rely on this place. He sighed, as if thinking of something, he continued. And because of this, there are people from all kinds of planes mixed in here, and there are no rules or restrictions, it's extremely chaotic. Lone Moon then nodded, there was such a complicated place. Why do you want us to go here? He raised his hand and brushed across the image. Instantly, the entire image changed and zoomed in on an exceptionally colorful place on the right. He then explained, it's like this, the last time I passed by this place, I happened to run into a plane storm and accidentally dropped something. After testing, I can only roughly calculate that it's in this area. He pointed to the colored map and said, I've investigated, this piece of lost land has a lot of similarities with your current immortal spirit plane. That thing is very important to me, so I wanted to ask Littling to help me find it. What exactly did you lose? Lone Moon continued to ask. Mealy's expression turned more solemn. He adjusted the image on the table once again. Immediately, the image changed. A round and glossy creature with colorful spots on its body jumped out. Egg? Lone Moon was stunned. They had come all the way to find an egg. Shen Ying's expression darkened. This is a spirit seed. Littling is still the smart one. Milu instantly smiled even more brightly. She could tell with one look. The corner of Shen Ying's mouth twitched. He could even throw away the spirit seed. Why don't you throw yourself away? I was just careless. Mila chuckled. It wasn't easy for our plane to nurture this spiritual seed. Without it, living beings wouldn't be able to be born. If it weren't for the fact that I've been really busy recently, I wouldn't have been willing to let Littling. Alright, I'll go. Shening interrupted him. Then I'll leave it to Littling. The look in his eyes softened. He thought of something and added, the void land is too dangerous. Littling, you must be careful. I will wait for you to come back. Alright, you can go now. Shening waved her hand. Mealy's face was full of reluctance. Are you chasing me away so soon? After all, we haven't seen each other for so long. I've been thinking about you. Shening didn't answer. She just looked straight at him. After a while, she replied with an ambiguous, oh. The smile on Mealy's face froze. He then stood up and put on a look of helplessness. Alright, I'll go first. With that said, he then turned back to open the plane gate. Before he left, he didn't forget to say, I'll miss you. Then he completely disappeared from the divine realm. Lone Moon looked in the direction where he disappeared. Then he turned back to look at Shening, who looked like she was deep in thought. Something's up. Master is really going to that void land. I Ching couldn't help but ask. Shening nodded. It's not a difficult matter. She had been there many times when she was working in the past. I Ching faltered. He clenched his fists by his side. After hesitating for a while, he still didn't speak. It's rare to see you so enthusiastic, Lone Moon said with some surprise. You're actually taking the initiative to help. Why weren't you so diligent in the past? Classmates were indeed different. Shening faltered. With a serious expression, she asked, wasn't I diligent in the past? Don't you feel embarrassed asking this? When were you diligent? Shening, alright, when are we leaving? Shening thought for a while before replying, tomorrow. In such a hurry. Indeed, she was still being considerate. Lone Moon turned back to look at the distracted chef. His eyes darkened. He sighed and said, tomorrow then. Chef, let's go. Let's go and talk about the issue of food expenses. With that said, he put his arm around Lone Moon and walked towards the direction of the kitchen. I Ching looked up at him. But he didn't reply. He just walked back to the kitchen and quietly took out the ingredients to get busy. His expression was still a little dazed. He seemed worried and confused. Alright. I know you feel uncomfortable when you see that person. Lone Moon sighed. He couldn't help but advise. But look at Shening. She definitely doesn't have any feelings for him. He patted his shoulder and said, let me tell you. There's no need for you to worry about this. He's just an ex-boyfriend. That's all in the past. Shening likes you now. Past. The radish-in chef's hand dropped to the ground. He turned back to look at him. Master and him, and the past. Didn't he know? Lone Moon's heart skipped a beat. Did he mess something up? Late at night. Chef, did I not close the windows tonight? No. Oh, then did I wear too little clothes during the day? No. Did you come up with a new dish today? You want me to try it? No. Then Father Nyo must have deducted our food expenses again. Not yet. Oh. Shining took a deep breath. Then she asked, then can you explain why you're not sleeping in the middle of the night? Why are you sitting on my roof? I Ching was stunned. He slowly lowered his head. After a while, he spoke. His voice was so low that it was almost inaudible. There was even a hint of grievance in it. I'm afraid I'll disturb Master's sleep. So. I hid further away. So you think you're not disturbing her by lying on the roof beam and staring at her? And you're climbing up in front of her. Shining sighed. She waved at him. Come down first. He moved out of reflex. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something. He sat back down and shook his head. I'll just watch Master from here. It was as if he had woken up early in the morning to work. He tentatively picked up a bun and took a small bite. Ha! It's not sour anymore. It was soft, sweet, fragrant, and delicious. It seemed to be more delicious than before. Had Chef thought it through? Or had he gone crazy from the stimulation? He stretched his head out to look at the kitchen suspiciously, only to find that Chef was putting the plates of cooked vegetables into the storage bag, and the stove was filled with layers of already cooked vegetables, each one of them carefully preserved with an array. Chef, you. He couldn't help but ask. Isn't Master going out? Chef turned back to look at him before replying. We have never been to that place before. Prepare some food in advance in case we can't find anything. He answered matter-of-factly. Lone Moon's expression became more complicated. Was he crazy? That must be it. Yesterday, he had a disappointed look on his face, and today, he suddenly recovered. As a good parent, Lone Moon felt that he had to care about his children's mental health. I say, Chef, he was about to ask when the sound of the door opening came from not far away. I Ching paused. He raised his hand and put away all the dishes. He turned and walked out, walking quickly towards the direction of the door. Shining rubbed her eyes and walked out of the house. She still looked lazy. In fact, she seemed to be even lazier than before. Her footsteps were light as if she was walking on clouds. She looked like she did not sleep for the whole night. Master. Chef went up to her. Shining looked up. Then, she simply fell into the arms of the person in front of her. She leaned on Chef like mud. She rubbed her eyes and yawned. Chef was stunned for a moment. Out of habit, he helped the person who was about to fall to the ground. He held her carefully. In an instant, there seemed to be something soft pouring out of his eyes, wrapping tightly around the person in front of him. Master, breakfast is ready. Go wash up first. Shining answered. She still lazily did not move. Chef did not move either. The two just leaned against the front of the house quietly. Lone Moon looked at the two of them suspiciously. Was it an illusion? Although he had seen this scene many times before, he felt that something was wrong with the two of them today. It was as if there was a special aura around them. He thought for a long time but could not figure it out. Hey, the two of you. He could not help but speak. Don't delay. Didn't you say that you were going to Void Land this morning? It's almost noon. Shining glanced at him. Then, she straightened and turned to wash up. Chef, on the other hand, looked over with some resentment. Why are you looking at me? Lone Moon was confused. Did he say something wrong? Chef did not answer. He just turned and chased after Shining. He went to get water and a towel. Something was wrong. He turned and sat back at the table. He had just eaten 2 buns when the 2 of them came back. He hurriedly increased his speed and stuffed another 2 buns into his mouth. Once at the table, Shining immediately came back to life. She started to fight with him for food energetically. Lone Moon could have won. But Chef actually joined the battle. He snatched a few of his soup dumplings and gave them to Shining. Although this happened often in the past, Lone Moon did not know why. He felt that something was different this time. Perhaps the way he looked at Shining was too soft. It was as if water would drip out if he was not careful. His eyes were so focused as if nothing else existed. That strange feeling appeared again. Lone Moon felt goosebumps all over his body for no reason. Just as they were about to finish eating, Chef subconsciously raised his hand to wipe the corner of Shen Ying's mouth. The 2 of them were so close that they seemed to be one. There seemed to be a sweet feeling around them. Only then did he realize what this aura was. Damn it. F***ck your dog food. Fall. Chapter 565. Hey, that's enough. Lone Moon glared at the 2 of them. Stop showing off. Showing off so early in the morning, what exactly did you 2 do last night? He was just asking casually. Shining did not think much of it, but Chef's face blushed. He stood up immediately and said loudly, as if trying to hide something, No. No. We didn't do anything last night. This concerns Master's reputation, Father Nyo. Don't talk nonsense. Lone Moon, Shining. Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. He turned to look at Shining with a look of understanding, giving her a look that told her to be honest. Unfortunately, the old driver opposite was calm. She even calmly took the last bun from under his nose, stuffed it into her mouth in 2 or 3 bites. Then she stood up directly, pulling the red-faced chef beside her who was about to explode. Let's go, let's go. Lone Moon stood up and followed. However, the 2 of them were even more affectionate. Shining was still all right, especially a certain person who was being pulled along with a blushing face. His entire body seemed to be emitting pink bubbles, and his gaze never left Shining. It was full of joy, happiness, and shyness. Was it the other way around? Lone Moon was even more curious. He pushed Shining and said, Hey, what's wrong with Chef? Shining glanced at him, opened her mouth, but in the end said, You won't understand even if I tell you. Why wouldn't I understand? You look down on single dogs. Look down on. Get lost. Lone Moon glared at her. You don't know how popular I am. The girls who like me can line up a few streets, believe it or not, I can show you in minutes. Why did it feel like he heard a flag being raised? Shining told them about the spirit seed in advance. In short, the spirit seed was actually the same as their plane original source. It was something that gave birth to the living beings of the plane. It was just that the existence of each plane original source was different. Meili's plane original source was obviously an egg, so he was right, it was indeed very important to him. So they did not delay much, spent some time after the meal, determined the position of the end of the void, and immediately rushed over. The moment they crossed the planar gate, they only felt a mottled and mixed aura assaulting them. This aura was very strange. There was spiritual energy, immortal energy, divine energy, and other things inside. There was also some completely unknown energy mixed together. As expected of a place that had merged with the living beings of many planes, even the aura here was so chaotic. This was the first time they had encountered such a chaotic aura, and they couldn't help but be stunned. In the next moment, they suddenly heard a cry for help from the side. "Help! Help! I beg you to let me go. Go ahead and shout. Scream as much as you want. No one will come to save you even if you scream yourself hoarse." The three of them, what the hell kind of outdated lines are these? He saw a few people standing in the grass not far to his right. There were 3 men and 1 woman. The 3 men had fierce expressions and weapons in their hands. There was only 1 woman lying on the ground. Her clothes were in tatters and her face was covered in tears. She was looking at the people in front of her in horror. The thinner of the 3 stepped forward with a lewd smile on his face. "Sister, why don't you just obediently follow us? As long as you're obedient, I promise that you'll have a good life in the future." "That's right," the other man added. "Don't worry, we 3 brothers will definitely treat you well." "That's right, you're a woman. Why do you have to suffer so much? My heart aches just looking at you. Let me treat you well." With that said, the 3 of them directly went forward to grab her. The woman had nowhere to retreat. She cried out again, tears rolling down her face. Lone Moon frowned and could not help but call out, "Stop." He quickly walked over and at the same time, made a hand seal. A strong wind swept towards the 3 of them, instantly forcing them back a few feet. He turned to look at the disheveled woman. After thinking for a moment, he took out a piece of clothing from his storage bag and threw it over. The woman was stunned for a moment. As if she had just reacted, she hurriedly picked up the clothing and wrapped it around her body. She looked at the people in front of her with a look of gratitude and worry. "Why are the 3 of you making things difficult for a woman in broad daylight?" he said in a low voice. "Where did this mongrel demon come from? How dare you meddle in my business?" The tall and thin man glared at Lone Moon fiercely and even waved the knife in his hand threateningly. "That's right." The other, a little more muscular, said, "This woman owes us money and is not returning it. It's only right for us to use her as payment. If you know what's good for you, get out of my way." "No. It's not like that." The woman on the ground panicked. She took 2 steps forward and tugged at the corner of Lone Moon's clothes. "They lied to me. I don't even know them. I don't owe them anything at all. I was just passing by and was kidnapped by them. Stinky woman, you owe money and not return it. How dare you deny it?" The tall and thin man scolded loudly. The woman was so frightened that she shivered and shrank even further behind Lone Moon. Lone Moon frowned and swept a glance at the 3 of them. "Since the 3 of you say that she owes you money, why don't you show me the proof?" The 3 of them were stunned. A trace of guilt appeared on their faces, but they still argued, I came out in a hurry today. I didn't bring it." "Oh." Lone Moon laughed coldly. "This is the first time I've heard someone say that they came specially to collect a debt without bringing proof." "You." The man was furious. Chapter 566. The few of them could not help but burst out laughing. They tried their best to suppress their laughter, their shoulders shaking uncontrollably. A moment later, they replied, "So it's the chicken spirit. Sorry for not recognizing you. Our chef has been keeping his name hidden." The man frowned, as if dissatisfied with their reactions. He scanned the 3 of them and said, "What kind of demons are you? Hurry up and report your identities." "Hello, chicken spirit. I'm the MSG." Shining raised her hand and replied. The man paused. What kind of spirit was MSG? He had never heard of it. But it was not convenient for him to ask. He turned to Chef in the middle and asked, "And what are you?" Chef faltered for a moment and replied honestly, "I'm human. Human spirit." "Humph, you're indeed a bunch of small demons from the countryside." The man's gaze became even more disdainful. He thought that they were really from a remote race. Finally, he fixed his gaze on Lone Moon, who was laughing the loudest. "And you? And what are you?" Lone Moon took a deep breath and turned to the chicken spirit. He twirled the fan in his hand and smiled. "I'm not some demon. I'm a god." The chicken spirit paused and blurted, "You're a god spirit." Lone Moon, #large-scale failure of acting tough #crazy my ass. "You're the crazy one. Your whole family is crazy. Where the hell did you get the word psycho?" "Pft, pft, pft, don't laugh." He turned and glared at the master and disciple. "Do you believe I won't deduct your food allowance?" The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He could not be bothered to continue talking to these three hooligans. "Forget it, let's do it." With that said, he waved the fan in his hand and several wind blades swept toward them. Before the three of them could react, they were directly blown away. Not even their shadows could be found. He turned to look at the girl beside him, who was still in shock. "Miss, are you all right?" The girl paused and seemed to have just reacted. Tears streamed down her face. Thank you, benefactors, for saving me. I can't thank you enough." With that said, she started kowtowing. "Miss, don't stand on ceremony." Lone Moon hurriedly helped her up. "It's nothing." Only then did the girl stand up and stop crying. Holding his hand, she slowly stood up. After a while, she seemed to feel that it was inappropriate, so she quickly retracted her hand and took a step back. She looked up at Lone Moon and immediately lowered her head. Her face blushed shyly. She tugged at the robe draped over her body. Perhaps it was because she remembered that the robe was also given to her by the other party, so her face turned even redder. "Miss, this is the wilderness. It's inconvenient for you, Lone Moon, to be alone." Lone Moon thought for a moment and suddenly suggested, "We don't have anything important to do at the moment. If you don't mind, we can send you back first." The girl was overjoyed. He poured a cup of tea and pushed it to Shining out of habit. "I'm just staying. It's convenient for me to find out more about the spirit seed." "Oh, *2, get your flirting lines back." He glared at them again. "What's more, there are so many people who like me. I can't do anything about it." "You've fallen for Sister Chu." Shining leaned in closer to him. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "Of course not." "Then you stay. Find out more. You can find out more anywhere." Lone Moon immediately gave them a look as if they were retarded. "Nonsense. It's our first day here. We don't have anything. We don't even know what currency is. If you don't stay here because you saved our lives, do you want to sleep on the streets?" Shining, Gichin, that made so much sense. The poor guy had nothing to say to that. The few of them did not stay in the living room for long. In less than an hour, Chu Tao returned. She had changed into a long pink robe. She looked much better than when she was in a sorry state. One look and you could tell that she had put in a lot of effort. She had also changed her hair into an exquisite bun. There was a string of fine tassels hanging from the bun. With every step she took, the tassels swayed. They were especially eye-catching under the sunlight. "Sorry to keep you waiting." She smiled and bowed to them. "Miss Chu, you're too polite." Lone Moon smiled and replied. Out of habit, he began to flatter each other. All kinds of pleasantries came out of his mouth. But it was only Father Nyo who was like this. Chu Tao's expression became more and more gentle as she looked at him. Chapter 567. Lone Moon saw that she was almost done bragging. He suddenly remembered something and said, "Oh yes, Miss Chu, you are a local. You must be more well-informed than us. Coincidentally, we have a favor to ask. I wonder if Miss Chu would be willing to help us." "What is it?" Chu Tao paused and asked hurriedly. "Princess Lone Moon, don't worry. I am indebted to you. If you need my help, I will definitely do my best to help. It's not that important." Lone Moon smiled politely. He was just thinking about how to bring up the matter of the spirit seed without anyone noticing. Shening, who was beside him, suddenly took out the image left by Lumi. Instantly, a colorful egg-shaped image appeared. "We are looking for this. Have you seen it before?" Cough cough. Lone Moon was almost scared to death. He coughed a few times. He turned and glared at her. "Why did you freaking say it out loud? Isn't the spirit seed very important?" "This." Chu Tao took 2 steps forward as something flashed across her eyes. After a while, she hid it and replied with a smile, "I've never seen an egg like this before. I'm sorry that I can't help you." "Oh." Shening kept it. Chu Tao continued to exchange pleasantries with them. Perhaps because of the time difference, the sky slowly darkened. Chu Tao treated them to a sumptuous dinner. Then, she reluctantly instructed the servants to bring them to the guest room. "Shening, why did you take out the spirit seed so directly?" When they reached the guest room, Lone Moon asked seriously. Wasn't she afraid that such an important thing would attract the attention of others? "This egg is just a camouflage that Hua Hua set up for the spirit seed. It is not its original appearance." Shening explained, "Apart from the manager, others would at most think that it is an ordinary energy body. They would not be able to tell what is different about it. So that was why." Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. "In other words, I can look for it openly. I don't have to worry about others finding out." She nodded. "You should have said so earlier." Suddenly, he felt that this matter was much easier. "Alright, let's hurry and ask around tomorrow. You guys should rest early too." As he spoke, he opened the door and was about to return to his room. After thinking for a moment, he turned around and said, "Oh right, you better stay in the room and don't run around." This was not their plane. If they lost it again, not only would they not be able to find it, they might not even be able to return. "Oh." Seeing that he and Chef were about to leave, she suddenly thought of something and added, "Don't worry, Chef is watching me." With that said, she quickly pulled Chef, who was about to leave, back. Lone Moon glanced at Chef, who was being dragged back, then looked at Shening and nodded seriously. Then he turned and went back to his own room, not noticing Chef's red face. The next day. And she heard from the people nearby that the courtyard they stayed in yesterday was originally for rent. The owner of the courtyard was from Lingyi City. The people staying there often changed. And there was no trace of the 3 people from yesterday. The clues seemed to have suddenly stopped. Seeing that they were getting closer, Shening and I Ching decided, eat first. The others were fine, but Father Nyo did not need to worry. And with his cultivation, even the most powerful little demon would not be able to hurt him at all. And when it came to finding people, Father Nyo was the professional. So after looking around without any news, the master and disciple made a wise decision. They would wait for Father Nyo to come back and find them. They would just wait for his parents to come and pick him up. Feeling at ease, the 2 of them stayed in the empty courtyard for a few days. And because chef's stock was sufficient, they did not need to worry about food. Until a few days later, the owner of the courtyard came to collect the house. They had no choice but to end their days of waiting for people to pick them up. Master, I've asked around. The currency used here is void coins. Spirit stones, immortal stones and silver are not used. I Ching looked at Shining guiltily. He was really not good at making money. We don't have a place to stay today, but there's still no news of Father Nyo in the city. Why don't we? Or look around. He had been lost for a few days. Chapter 568. Oh. Shining answered lazily, not looking like she wanted to move at all. She turned to look at him and suddenly paused. What did you call me just now? Master. No, I think I heard Father Nyo's voice just now, Shining said. Chef paused and subconsciously released his divine perception to scan, but did not find Father Nyo's figure. Just as he was about to ask, he really heard a familiar voice. Cheat Shin, Chef. Do you hear me? The voice was faint, but seemed to be very close. I Ching paused and suddenly thought of something. He immediately opened his storage bag and took out a transmission talisman that he had for many years. It was indeed the voice inside. Father Nyo. Nonsense. Where the hell did you two go? Hurry and save me. From the talisman came Father Nyo's intermittent, but slightly broken voice. I'm telling you, that is a pervert. I'm not in your city now, you two listen up. He suddenly stopped mid-sentence. The transmission talisman was still lit, but there was no sound at all. He was listening. Father Nyo. Lone Moon. Chef called a few times, but there was no other sound from the talisman. After a while, the light on the talisman slowly dimmed. What was going on? His heart sank. Father Nyo seemed to be in big trouble. Master, looks like we can't continue waiting. He should be trapped by something. Yes. Shining continued to nibble on her fruit. But I Ching frowned. He didn't speak in detail just now, and we don't know much about this place. If the person who captured him wants to hide, we don't know where to look for him. I know. Shining suddenly opened her mouth. Ah. Ha. I Ching paused. Master knows. Shining suddenly pointed to the opposite side of the street. Isn't it written there? I Ching turned and saw that there was suddenly a lot of people in front of the signboard across the street. There was a new notice pasted on that signboard, and it seemed to be some kind of sorcery. The words on it flew out one by one and floated in the air. There was even its own dubbing that resounded throughout the city. Special news, Her Majesty Tao Chu will be getting married in the Imperial City in 3 days. Marrying young Master Lone Moon of the Godly Elves. Young Master Lone Moon was chivalrous and courageous. He was handsome on the outside and kind on the inside. He was still a rare man in the world. The Emperor was very pleased, so he announced to all the elites in the kingdom that young Master Lone Moon would be the Empress. Amnesty for the world. The whole world should celebrate. I Ching, Shining, she suddenly understood why Father Nyo broke down like that just now. Was this a love disaster? Who asked him to raise flags for no reason? Master, what should we do? I Ching turned to look at Shining, frowning. What else can we do? Shining patted the pastry crumbs off her hands, but failed. She wiped them on Chef's body and said, let's hurry to the wedding. If Father Nyo heard what Master said, he would really deduct their food allowance. Shining really did not expect that Father Nyo, who had been single for 10,000 years, would either not make a move or flirt with the queen of the fairy kingdom. Indeed, she could not underestimate Father Nyo's charm. Father Nyo was getting married. As his family, of course they could not be absent. So that day, they asked for directions to the imperial city and rushed there on their swords. The area of the void was vast, and there were turbulence everywhere, as well as space-time storms that appeared from time to time. They could not teleport directly here, so they could only fly over on their swords. Chef's speed was not slow, but the two of them still spent 2 days before they reached the imperial city. From afar, they saw a huge pink palace. Different from the other majestic palaces, this palace was on a huge tree. It looked like a peach tree, but it was so tall that it covered the sky and the sun. Its leaves extended to the ground and the entire city. The tree was full of pink peach blossoms, falling into the city below. It was like a never-ending rain of peach blossoms. They had to say, this was the most girlish city they had ever seen. The queen's taste was indeed extraordinary. The two of them landed directly and entered the city. Without a doubt, the palace on the tree was that Queen Tao Chu's palace. Thinking about how she called herself Chu Tao before, and how she gave her name so casually, she could only fool outsiders like them. If they were not mistaken, Father Nyo should be in the palace on the tree. I Ching subconsciously released his divine perception and scanned the entire imperial city, but he could not find any trace of Father Nyo. Master. I Ching hesitated. There seems to be some strange sorcery around the palace that can actually block my divine perception. Shining nodded and explained, the void land is full of living beings from another plane. It's normal that the system is not compatible. Then should we take the opportunity to barge in now? There's no rush. Shen Ying's eyes narrowed, and there was a hint of mischief in her voice. We are proper family members after all. We can just go in openly. She pointed to the entrance under the tree. I Ching hesitated, but still flew in that direction obediently and stopped in front of a group of gremlins guarding the entrance. How dare you? Who dares to trespass the palace? Instantly, more than 10 guards looked in their direction. I Ching was about to speak, but the leader of the ear guards paused, and then became delighted. He quickly stepped forward and cupped his fists. So it's 2 esteemed guests. He waved his hand at the guards behind him, indicating for them to move aside. 2 esteemed guests. My king told me that you would come, so he specially asked me to wait here. The Empress has been waiting for a long time. Please come in. I Ching looked at him in surprise. He thought that the Empress deliberately avoided them and took Father Nyo away because she did not want them to follow. Why did it seem like she did not care at all that they chased after them? Master. He was a little hesitant. No matter how he looked at it, there was something wrong. Let's go. Shining did not care at all, and directly followed. I Ching had no choice but to hurry up and follow. They walked all the way to a cave under the big tree. They passed by a few teleportation arrays, but they were completely different places. In a short while, they were already standing in front of the group of pink palaces. There were no traps or dangers along the way. It was as if the Empress really welcomed them. 2 esteemed guests, please. The guard leading the way stopped at the entrance of the main hall. Her Majesty the Empress is already inside. I Ching was even more confused. He subconsciously grabbed Shen Ying's hand, and then walked in. The inside of the palace was similar to the outside. There was also a thick layer of peach blossom petals everywhere. There were also various kinds of translucent veils hanging on both sides. When the wind blew, they floated like clouds, like a dream. Chapter 569. The two of you are finally here. A familiar female voice came from the front. Tao Chu was sitting on the throne in the middle of the hall. She still looked the same as before, but there was an additional mark of a peach blossom on her forehead. She was wearing a pink formal dress, but she was leaning against the bosom of someone next to her, which made her look even more seductive. And the person next to her was Lone Moon. He was looking down at the woman in his arms. His eyes were so focused and gentle that he did not even notice the two people who came in. Father No. I Ching called out subconsciously. Only then did the people in the seats of honor turn around and look at the two of them. But in an instant, he looked down at the person in his arms again. As if he could not bear to look away. I thought you would not make it for our wedding. Tao Chu, on the other hand, stood up and looked at the two of them in surprise. Thank goodness you made it in time. Little Chu. Lone Moon called out softly. He picked up the cloak that had fallen on the throne and gently put it on Tao Chu. Be careful not to catch a cold. Tao Chu turned back and smiled. Thank you, husband. What are you thanking me for? If you catch a cold, I will be the one who will feel bad. Tao Chu looked at him coquettishly and snuggled into his arms again. In an instant, the whole hall was filled with the smell of dog food. The master and disciple both shivered and got goosebumps. Shening could not help but scratch her arms. So this was how it felt to be fed dog food. The two of you. I Ching looked back and forth between the two. Only then did they come back to their senses. Tao Chu became even more shy. She looked at Lone Moon lovingly and said, It's my fault. I haven't told the two of you yet. Young Master Lone Moon and I love each other and we have already promised to marry each other. Tomorrow is our big day. The two of you must be punctual. I Ching looked at Lone Moon in surprise. Father No, are you really going to be her Empress? Not going back. If we get married, this will be our home, Tao Chu answered. Of course, you can stay if you want. I Ching frowned and looked at Lone Moon, who was still looking at Tao Chu affectionately. He asked directly, if that's the case, why did you suddenly disappear that night? It's all my fault. Tao Chu blushed and said shyly, that night, I went to confess my feelings to young Master Lone Moon and found out that he was interested in me too. I was so happy that I agreed to tie the knot with him. Who would have thought that young Master was so anxious that he rushed back to the Imperial City at night and didn't have time to inform you too? Why so anxious? In other words, the two of them fell in love with each other and couldn't wait to get married? Somehow, I Ching felt that something was wrong. Tao Chu spoke again, the two of you must have worked hard on your journey. I have already prepared a place for the two of you to stay, so you can go and rest first. You are young Master Lone Moon's family. Tomorrow, we will need to trouble the two of you to be our witnesses. She then summoned two servants dressed in palace attire to lead the way. The two of them could not stay any longer. Turning back to look at the two of them who were so affectionate, I Ching could not help but ask, Father No, if you get married, what about our food allowance next month? The two behind him paused. Something flashed across Tao Chu's eyes, but she immediately recovered. Still smiling, she said, of course it will be the same as before. Oh. I Ching then turned and pulled his master away, following the palace maid who led the way. All the way to the guest room in the side hall, Chef set up several isolation arrays before saying in a low voice, Master, I'm afraid Father No is being controlled by that flower demon. That's right. Did you just realize that? Then, should we hurry and save him? In the hall just now, Father No did not say a word to them, as if he did not know them. There's no hurry. Shening chuckled. We haven't had the wedding wine yet. Let's drink first. I Ching frowned. After thinking for a while, he finally could not help but say, Master, if we just watch Father Nyo like this and don't find a reason, he will really fly into a rage. What's more? He shook the bag in his hand. We've eaten all the ingredients we brought these few days. There's no more left. Shening stiffened. She lowered her head and thought for a while before saying, What do you think about the reason why we can't find a way to break Father Nyo's control? I Ching paused, as if he had just thought of this point. His expression instantly became serious. Master is right. The gremlins in this world are different from ours. They don't seem to use immortal spirit chi for cultivation, and there's not a trace of demonic chi in their bodies. If we act rashly, even if we save Father Nyo, we might not be able to break their control. I understand, Master. Shening opened her mouth. After a while, she patted his shoulder and said seriously, It's good that you understand. Then, her eyes brightened and she looked eager. Then tomorrow, how do you think we should go to the bridal room? Oh yes, we must prepare the shadow stones. Bring a few more. Master, you just want to watch Father Nyo make a fool of himself, right? Definitely, right? The next day. Tao Chu was a queen after all. The wedding ceremony was naturally very lively. The entire palace was filled with a festive atmosphere. There were lanterns and colored banners everywhere. People came and went. Even the peach blossom petals falling from above seemed to be redder. When the auspicious hour arrived, they saw Lone Moon, dressed in red, holding the hand of Tao Chu, who was also dressed in red. Tao Chu did not lie. Chapter 570. Quick, 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 shadow recording stone, shadow recording stone. Shening nudged Chef beside her. I Ching took out 2 stones with array formations imprinted on them. He thought for a moment and set up a concealment array around the 2 of them. Then he imitated his master and leaned against the window sill to look into the room. Father Nyo was still sitting motionlessly on the bed. Even the smile on his face did not falter. Until the door creaked. Someone pushed it open. It was Tao Chu. She was still dressed in her bright red wedding dress. She swayed her body as she walked towards the person on the bed. Lone Moon, who had been sitting in a daze, finally reacted. He stood up and walked over to her. He held her hand and they sat together on the bed. Husband. Tao Chu lowered her head and leaned against Lone Moon's shoulder. Her whole body was in his arms. Little Chu. Lone Moon looked at the person in his arms affectionately. We are finally husband and wife. Tao Chu blushed and leaned even closer. She said coquettishly, Then I am the only one in your heart. Of course, Lone Moon replied. Do you really like me? Tao Chu asked again to confirm. Of course. I don't believe you. She suddenly stood up straight and turned to look at him with a complicated expression. After a while, she said seriously, Husband, I want to hear your true feelings. With that, she suddenly flicked her sleeves at Lone Moon, as if taking something back. The next moment, Lone Moon, who had been staring intently at Tao Chu, had a flash of clarity in his eyes. He blinked, and the next moment, his entire aura turned cold. All the affection and sweetness in his body disappeared. Like a spring, he sprang up and his voice rose several octaves as he blurted out, Are you crazy? Husband, I really want to spend the rest of my life with you. Tao Chu looked at him with a wronged expression. As long as you promise me to stay, I won't treat you like this again, all right? With that said, she leaned towards him again. What are you trying to do? Lone Moon's face paled. He wanted to jump up. Get lost. But Tao Chu was one step faster. She pulled him back and pressed him down on the bed. Her hand was already reaching for his belt. Wow, was it really that exciting? A tyrant taking the bait. Shining, who was lying on the windowsill, widened her eyes. She hurriedly pointed inside and said, "Chef, hurry." "Yes, master." Before she could finish, in the next moment, Chef had already rushed in with a bang. Only then did Shining finish her sentence. "Quick, record it." On the other side, Chef had already flipped Tao Chu off the bed and threw her out mercilessly. "Holy shit, Chef, you're finally here." Lone Moon crawled out of bed, his face still full of anger. "What's wrong with you?" Chef glanced at him, only to realize that there was a layer of strange aura surrounding him, directly sealing the immortal chi in his body. "I don't even know what that pervert fed me," Lone Moon said angrily. "I can't use any spells at all." Chef did not have time to let him examine her. Tao Chu, who had fallen to the ground, had already climbed to her feet. She looked back at him with tears in her eyes and said in a very aggrieved male voice, "Husband, how could you do this to me?" "Wait a minute." A male voice. I Ching paused and looked seriously at the person who had fallen to the ground. Suddenly, his body shape changed. His arms became thicker, he became taller, and his face even grew, a beard. This was a man. Shining, who had come in at some point, and together with Chef, they turned to look at Lone Moon meaningfully. At the same time, they let out a long sigh. "Wow, what are you looking at?" Lone Moon glared back at them. "What the hell was with that look? I only found out after I was brought here that she would turn into a man at night. And she's a peach blossom demon. Plants are hermaphrodites in the first place. His taste was not that strong." "Husband." The man on the ground cried out even more pitifully. "Shut up." Lone Moon exploded. "Who the hell is your husband?" "Chef, quickly think of a way to help me undo this restriction. I'm going to destroy this disgusting thing." "Husband, I'm so infatuated with you. Why do you have to hate me so much?" Tao Chu was even more upset. Shizi held her heart and began to sob, looking very delicate. But he was a strong man now. Tears streamed down his bearded face, and the scene was Lone Moon felt his stomach churn. He sat up on the bed and held on to the bedpost as he turned around and began to vomit. "Ugh, I Ching, Shining, so this was the reason why he broke down and asked for help back then. He really had a strong taste. Hurry up and get this guy out of my sight," Lone Moon said. He looked up and continued to vomit. Tao Chu, on the other hand, glanced at Chef and Shining. Her expression turned cold and she scanned them angrily. Finally, she looked at Lone Moon and said, "Although you don't want to be with me, leave your body to accompany me." After saying that, he stood up and did something. There was a rustling sound outside, and a large number of peach blossom petals flew in and surrounded him instantly. The petals rushed in like sharp blades, and the whole bridal chamber suddenly collapsed with a bang. "Be careful, his fragrance is bewitching and can restrict immortal energy. Don't let him get close to you," Lone Moon hurriedly reminded Chef. Chef frowned and set up a defensive array around him. He watched as the petals rained down on him. But Chef only turned the sword in his hand. In an instant, the overwhelming sword chi was reflected back at him. The petals in the sky shattered into pieces. Before he could make a move, he heard a scream. "Ah!" Tao Chu fell to the ground. His body was covered with sword marks. He looked at Lone Moon in horror. Who are you?" Chef did not waste time talking to him. He conjured a seal and summoned several spirit swords. They fell down and formed a sword array, trapping Tao Chu inside. Tao Chu's expression changed. Only then did he realize that he was afraid. His murderous aura disappeared and he returned to the weak and strong man he was just now. He looked at Lone Moon with tears in his eyes. "Husband, do you really want to kill me? Although I don't like you, I really like you." "Shut up. You caught me here in the middle of the night, restricted my freedom and controlled my body. Do you like that? Damn it. Crazy." Lone Moon was about to explode. He snatched the sword from Chef's hand and pointed it at him. "Try saying that again." "But I did it because I like you." He looked aggrieved, but he still looked at Lone Moon affectionately. "You promised me from the start that you wouldn't do this." "I did it because I love you." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.